Welcome to the Fantasy Audiobook. American Comics. Start by binding the Super Seminary clock. Chapter 1. It's a Whole New World. The moment Li Qingyan turned on his phone, this line of text was clearly displayed on the screen. I am the celestial computer, the big clock. The fonts on the screen begin to change. You have been bound as my highest authority owner. Since you are just an ordinary person at the moment, I can't communicate with you directly. So I can only communicate with you through the internet. The words on the screen are constantly changing. At this time, Li Qingyan looked confused. He just woke up. I woke up when I heard the ringtone of my cell phone. He couldn't even remember how he fell asleep before. Looking around, the environment was exactly the same as where he lived. This phone is also his. It was the second-hand glory he had just purchased from a certain owner for 300 yuan more than a month ago. This pink mobile phone case with the 4 characters of good luck and wealth printed on it was chosen for him by the girl he liked. I was woken up from a good sleep. When I woke up and saw this inexplicable pop-up window, Li Qingyan was a little inexplicably annoyed. Who are you? A hacker. If you want to invade, you should choose someone with good conditions. Why would you choose a poor fellow like me? Don't you know that this is a model that is several years behind the times? Li Qingyan quickly typed these sentences on his mobile phone. Honor 10, it's already the era of Pura 70. What hacker is so short-sighted that he would still target his second-hand phone? I'm not a hacker. I am the celestial computer with the highest technology in the super god universe, the big clock. These 2 sentences popped up on the phone screen. Okay, you're the big clock. Li Qingyan was speechless. Is this a hacker who got stupid after watching anime? When you are bored, why don't you come to make fun of yourself? Tell me, what are you going to do? Li Qingyan entered the questions in his mind on his mobile phone. You want to steal the data on my phone? Want to steal my Alipay or WeChat? Or was the bank card stolen as well? All my accounts add up to less than 100 yuan, don't you think so? Li Qingyan is a hard worker. These few dozen yuan are his rations for the next week. You've become a hacker. You can hack into other people's mobile phones, just for this little money, are you stupid? However, I can't say for sure. Li Qingyan murmured in his heart. This is a fool. He keeps talking about the super divine universe and the big clock. I don't need your money. I'm not here to tease you. If you don't believe it, I can prove it. 3 more lines of text popped up on the phone screen. However, this time, when these words appeared, they were obviously slower. Prove. Li Qingyan was inexplicably stunned. You actually have to prove it to yourself. You are really treating yourself like a big clock. Well, you can't argue with a fool. Why don't you just say a few words and tease him? Li Qingyan sighed in his heart. But at this moment, another line of words appeared on the phone screen. I'm not a fool, you don't need to tease me. If I go, can he guess what I'm thinking? Li Qingyan was a little shocked. Idiot, do you still have this kind of skill? It's not like you guessed it. I can read the information fluctuations in your mind through dark communication. The words on the phone screen jumped again. Use dark communication to read brain information. This is indeed a setting in the Super Seminary animation. Those super soldiers with powerful abilities can use their eyes of insight to read the information fluctuations in other people's minds and calculate their thoughts. Li Qingyan is just an ordinary person. If the other party is really a big clock, then reading his thoughts at the moment, or even reading how many action movies he watched last night, will probably be clear. But if you really believe what it says, don't you have to accept that I am a time traveler? Li Qingyan thought of the sentence he first saw. It's a whole new world. Isn't this the beginning of a time travel drama? Time travel, if this is true time travel, God is playing tricks on him. It took a lot of effort to get closer to the girl I like. Finally, there are signs of a happy life. You suddenly say, you have traveled through time. We are living a good life, who cares about time travel? No, you care. These 4 words suddenly popped up. Li Qingyan's expression also stiffened at this moment. As long as you can read brain information, you are awesome, right? Li Qingyan typed this line quickly on his mobile phone. Quickly, give me more information. What you are saying now is not enough to convince me. Li Qingyan actually already believed what the big clock said. After all, reading brain information is not that easy. At the very least, it won't be so accurate. It's just that Li Qingyan was a little depressed at this time. His thoughts were directly exposed. Didn't he want to lose face? I remember that there is micro-wormhole transportation in the super god universe, right? Use the wormhole to transport it and bring me the most delicious breakfast in the world. Li Qingyan just got up and happened to be hungry. Using wormhole transportation requires corresponding basic technical support. Basic technology. Li Qingyan was puzzled. The big clock is just an auxiliary celestial computer, and the specific operation needs to be instructed by the operator. And at this stage, as an ordinary person, you are not the real operator of the big clock. The big clock quickly answered on the mobile phone screen. It means that I have to become a super soldier before I can really bind you and command you. Li Qingyan was typing with contempt in his heart. Didn't he say that he had been bound to the highest authority of the big clock? Why didn't he become a super soldier and not use it directly? It is not necessary to become a super soldier. But before you have the real ability to protect yourself, exposing too many abilities will be disadvantageous to you. The big clock answered. Unfavorable to me. Li Qingyan typed this line of words in confusion. The environment of this world is dangerous. I can't actually help you now, I can only provide you with assistance through the internet. Only when you become a real super soldier can I reveal more of my abilities. So, please give priority to becoming a super soldier in the shortest possible time. The big clock said in detail. It was pointing out to Li Qingyan what he needed to do most at the moment. Because only by becoming a super soldier can you truly have the ability to control the big clock. Only by becoming a super soldier can Li Qingyan have enough strength to protect himself. Only by becoming a super soldier and accessing the database of the big clock can you truly master the big clock. Well, it seems very simple. But I'm just an ordinary person. How do you want me to become a super soldier? You are already a cheat. Aren't there any novice rewards? For example, give me a tube of potion and directly become a super soldier or something. Li Qingyan was a little depressed. How can he become a super soldier when he has nothing? Just rely on the big clock to type a few lines on your phone. New world. Which world is this? Li Qingyan has no clue about becoming a super soldier. Now, he can't completely believe that he has really traveled through time. He hasn't fully accepted it yet, and there are so many things told to him on the phone, namely the big clock. He had to go out and see for himself. Get up, walk to the closet as usual, take out clothes and put on them. Brush your teeth, wash your face, and take a few sips of the half-filled bottle of Nutritional Express from the second-hand refrigerator. Put on that brand new pair of Hongxing Erg. Before going out, check your phone and keys in your pocket one last time. Get ready, let's go. However, when he walked out of the rental house, everything outside became different. Although the overall style seems to be the same as the world I live in. But some details always reveal strangeness. The most suspicious thing is that there are a lot of things related to Stark Industries on the streets. The newspapers I saw on the road contained the latest news. The headline of the news is, Stark, I am Iron Man. This is exactly the news that Stark revealed his identity. It was completely different from the kind of movie promotion posters Li Qingyan saw in the real world, the news in real newspapers. When walking on the street, I see other people holding the same ones that were commonly used more than 10 years ago. Clamshell phones, slider phones, Joni phones, BBK music phones. I still remember that I was still a primary school student in this era. My second-hand Huawei, which is several years behind, is still an advanced mobile phone that is 10 years ahead of its time. Li Qingyan took out the Honor 10 from his pocket. Is this the Marvel Universe? Li Qingyan typed on his mobile phone. Marvel Cinematic Universe. A message from the big clock. Cinematic Universe. That's okay, at least it wasn't that chaotic at first. Li Qingyan felt a little relieved. Marvel Universe, Marvel Cinematic Universe. Although they are both from Marvel, there is a huge difference between the two. The Marvel Universe is a universe based on comics, and the Marvel in the comics has not only been in chaos since 2008, but has been in chaos since World War II. What do we do now? It has been determined that this is indeed a brand new world, and I have really traveled through it. So, now you have to consider how to survive in this world. Marvel Cinematic Universe. Although this universe is better than the Marvel universe, there won't be any big disasters that will affect his side in the next few years. But since we are in Marvel, it is impossible not to be in danger. What if a super criminal happens to show up nearby one day? What if the Avengers fail to succeed in any major event? What if Thanos snaps his fingers and kills him, and then the Avengers can't revive him? Your life is only safe if it is in your own hands. Now, the thing that can help Li Qingyan save his life is undoubtedly this big clock. I'm just your auxiliary computer. It's up to you to decide what to do. The big clock sent a reply. I am the leader, but you are much more advanced than me. There should be some good recommendations in your database, right? Li Qingyan also knew that he had to take the lead in this matter. But he is an ordinary person traveling through different worlds. What else can he do if he doesn't rely on golden fingers? Don't talk about those inspirational male protagonists in novels, who have made it big on their own. Anyway, when it comes to Li Qingyan, he is just an ordinary person with nothing. In this world, if he really wants to do something, without the help of a plugin, it is simply wishful thinking. There is no difference between another world and the real world. To become a super soldier, you need to develop special potions, and then cooperate with the impact of stellar energy to finally achieve success. Therefore, the first step is to study genetic potions. The big clock gives its plan. He even directly sent a table composed of various related information such as the raw materials and proportions required for genetic medicine to Li Qingyan's mobile phone. Li Qingyan looked at the table on his phone and looked at the symbols on it that he recognized. Can ordinary people prepare this genetic medicine? Li Qingyan doubted this very much. Genetic medicine, from this point of view, is related to the professional field. Moreover, such medicines, raw materials, etc. must be difficult to obtain. Scientists from pre-nuclear civilizations can handle it. A reply came from the big clock. Scientist, that's a scientist, what do you think I am? Li Qingyan stood up straight and shrugged helplessly. He knew that whatever he did, the big clock could see it. You can find a scientist to help you. Find a scientist to help me. Wouldn't that mean leaking the secret recipe of the genetic medicine? Li Qingyan shook his head. He would not give the treasure in his hand to others, so that they would have the same ability as himself, or even be stronger than him. You can find several different scientists to make different portions of materials at the same time. Finally, these finished materials will be concentrated, and you will fuse them according to the specified amount. This way, it will be foolproof. The idea given by the big clock appeared on the mobile phone screen. One day, these scientists will get together and try together, won't it be possible to achieve it? Li Qingyan still had concerns in his heart. I have the ability to monitor the entire Earth, and even the entire known universe. As long as they show signs of wanting to simulate the development of drugs, I can find it immediately. And by then, you who already have super gene drugs will have an easy time dealing with them. Or, after you succeed, you can just cut the grass and root it out. The last sentence of the big clock made Li Qingyan a little surprised. Although, this is indeed the best solution. But he may not be able to kill people directly when others have done the work for him. Moreover, I only gave them the material production process, and the final fusion of these materials needs to be completed by you. Finally, it is even more difficult for them to infuse stellar energy and activate the super genes in the body without me. The big clock added, and this time, Li Qingyan was relieved. Super gene potions, in addition to basic potions, also require stellar energy to activate. In the Super God Academy, it was Reina who first activated the super genes in Jie Shaolun and others. The other super warriors were then the responsibility of the Black Great Wall. But there is no doubt that to activate super genes, a certain amount of energy is needed as a basis. And stellar energy is obviously the most suitable. In the Super God universe, it is also the easiest to control and use stellar energy. Almost every civilization that has entered the space-level era has a certain technology for using stellar energy, and Reina, as the light of the sun, can apply stellar energy to the extreme. Supernova, Sun Incarnation, the two strongest moves, make Reina the walking doomsday in the Super God universe. Well, I understand. Li Qingyan no longer has any concerns about this. Anyway, I have traveled through time, and it is useless to think more. Now there is one last question. Li Qingyan paused for a moment, and then typed it into the phone. Finding scientists, finding materials, and making formulas all require money as operating capital. Yes, what Li Qingyan really lacks now is money. Without money, there is no basis for launching all plans. Don't think about transferring money directly to my card. This approach looks domineering, but it is actually stupid. Li Qingyan remembered the scene in Avengers 2 where Ultron transferred money to Ulysses. Yes, with the ability of the big clock, countless money can be deposited into Li Qingyan's account in minutes. But this approach is equivalent to putting Li Qingyan directly at the door of S.H.I.E.L.D. The big clock may be able to move money from the global financial market or other places in a way that no one knows. But Li Qingyan suddenly had a lot of money in his hands, and then he immediately began to recruit scientists and purchase a large number of precious materials, which would also attract the attention of S.H.I.E.L.D. or other superheroes. You have already achieved super technological success, and you are still considering this. The artificial intelligence of the big clock couldn't help but make a joke at this time. Since the birth of this big clock, it has always calculated the universe and the future. When did it consider such a useless thing as making money on a small planet? Make me some game software, sell it to the game companies in this world, and then make money. Why not find Iron Man? Before Li Qingyan finished typing, the big clock sent a message. What? Li Qingyan was stunned. He didn't want to ask the big clock to transfer money to him directly, so as not to attract attention. This time, the big clock actually found him directly, the guy who is now the most concerned. However, after the big clock explained, he still accepted the proposal. Through the big clock, directly contacted Iron Man. Then, just wait quietly. Half an hour later, when Li Qingyan was sitting in the breakfast shop, enjoying his white porridge and noodles, a red-themed Iron Man landed at the door of the breakfast shop. He turned his head and looked around, as if he was investigating. When he felt that there was no danger, he took off his armor and walked out. The man who came out was Tony Stark, who had just announced that he was Iron Man. The world's most famous billionaire, the world's first known superhero, appeared on the civilian street. Instantly, this place became the focus of the whole city. Those with mobile phones took photos crazily. Those without mobile phones also watched to their heart's content. As for Li Qingyan, he was also watching with some excitement. This is not in the movie, but in reality, and what he saw was the real thing. Ding dong. The notification sound of the mobile phone rang, and it was the big clock that sent him a message again. Li Qingyan picked up the phone and looked at the latest news on it. Wait until the Bluetooth headset arrives, and then talk to him. In this era, although Bluetooth headsets already exist, not everyone can afford them. Da Zongzong got one for Li Qingyan, but he had to wait for someone to deliver it. The reason why a Bluetooth headset is needed is naturally so that when negotiating with Stark, Da Zongzong can send him a message in time. You want a Bluetooth headset? Stark was standing in front of Li Qingyan at this time, and he saw the words on Li Qingyan's mobile phone. With the help of Jarvis, he could understand even if it was in Chinese. In addition, Stark also found that Li Qingyan's mobile phone was obviously not common on the market. The technology of mobile phones is at least 10 years ahead of the current stage, and few people have seen the software on it. Maybe, as he said, there is a way to help me avoid palladium poisoning. Stark came here because he received a message from the big clock, and the core content of the message was that it could solve the problem of palladium poisoning for him. Tony Stark was very successful after becoming Iron Man. But at the same time, becoming Iron Man seemed to be only his last highlight. Palladium has a very serious radiation effect on the human body. If used for a long time, the final result will inevitably be poisoning and death. If there is no arc reactor, the metal fragments in his body can kill him at any time. It can be said that Tony Stark is now a dying man. A dying person will not give up easily as long as there is hope. So, despite his doubts, he still rushed over as soon as possible. It was not until this moment, when he saw the mobile phone in Li Qingyan's hand, that he believed the content of the message he received. After all, a person who can own a technological product that is 10 years more advanced than ordinary people is definitely not ordinary. However, judging from Li Qingyan's age and his behavior, he does not seem to be the mastermind of the whole incident. Yeah, Li Qingyan raised his head. At the beginning, he decided to contact Iron Man with the big clock, and he was a little panicked. But now that he has really seen it, he must be calm. If he is not calm, how can he talk about this business next? He still needs to make the first pot of gold in his life through Stark, and then start preparing for the development of super gene drugs. Here, Stark casually took out a spare Bluetooth headset from his pocket and threw it in front of Li Qingyan. Li Qingyan took it, turned on the Bluetooth of his mobile phone, and connected it. The moment the Bluetooth connection was connected, the sound of the big clock came out. It was a male voice, similar to Li Qingyan's, but more rational. Hold on, we can win. Li Qingyan was speechless about the sound of the big clock. It sounded familiar, but obviously different. Now, can we have a good talk? Stark sat down in front of Li Qingyan. He also took out a lot of tissues from the tissue box on the table and wiped the table in front of him carefully. Well, it's okay. Li Qingyan tried to calm himself as much as possible. I can tell you the solution to palladium poisoning, and what I need is a large amount of funds and a batch of special materials. Li Qingyan first said his purpose. Li Qingyan got straight to the point right from the start, which made Stark feel reliable. Yes, if Li Qingyan talked about other things or was evasive, Stark would immediately think that he was being mysterious. But Li Qingyan stated his purpose and the conditions for exchange as soon as he opened his mouth, which was the appearance of a real business talk. Do you have a solution to palladium poisoning? If you want to gain benefits, you have to pay first. The funds and materials mentioned by Li Qingyan are nothing to Stark. But he must first make sure that Li Qingyan really has a solution to palladium poisoning. After all, this is a problem that even he is completely helpless. There are plenty of solutions. Li Qingyan said this because the big clock asked him to say it. The only solution he knew was the creation of a new element left to him by Stark's father, Howard Stark. But for the big clock, there are many ways to solve palladium poisoning. There are plenty. Stark smiled. Before, he really thought that Li Qingyan had a solution. But now, he felt that the young man in front of him was a lunatic. He was Iron Man, a genius physicist, but he was helpless with the problem of palladium. He could believe that someone else in the world could find a solution, because that might be what he had overlooked before. But he never believed that someone would have many solutions. First, create new elements to replace palladium. Second, use dark energy to charge your arc reactor. Third, use microwormholes to transport and remove the metal fragments in your blood vessels. Fourth, wait a minute, Stark interrupted Li Qingyan. Create new elements, dark energy, microwormholes. These can indeed be done, but the question is, how can these be mastered by a young man in his early 20s? Even if there are others behind you, he can't do it. Especially dark energy and microwormholes, these technologies are just simple concepts and words on Earth today. The content related to it is all speculation and fantasy, and there is no reliable actual information at all. Not to mention the control and application of these technologies. If you want to have fun, go find someone else. I don't have the time to mess around with you. Stark stood up and was about to go out. But almost at the same time, a message was sent to Jarvis's intelligence system. Jarvis immediately conveyed this information to Stark, and even simulated and displayed the data contained in this information in front of him. Stark was stunned when he saw the data model in front of him. In his mind, he had searched over and over again for all the possible elements in the real world to replace palladium. But the results were the same, and there was no feasibility at all. But in front of him, although this is just a data model, it clearly shows the feasibility of its century creation. Moreover, this element does not have strong radioactivity. It is similar to the elements that exist naturally, but it is clearly not observable by humans. This is a brand new element that your father once simulated, and he referred to an energy cube called the Cosmic Cube. Li Qingyan said, as for why the plan given to Stark was the one from Stark's father, in the words of the big clock, it was to prevent the ultra-deep technology from being explored by others. Because, in the big clock's plan, one of them is to provide Stark with void matter. Void matter, the ability it possesses, can definitely supply Stark's arc reactor. But void matter is considered the top matter in the super god universe. Once Stark is given the opportunity to contact void matter, maybe he can use this matter as a basis to explore more ultra-deep technologies related to void matter. Therefore, void matter cannot be provided to Stark. In addition, dark energy and micro-wormhole transportation technology are not yet practically applied by Li Qingyan. Under the constraints of these multiple conditions, the most suitable element for Stark to apply is the element left to him by Stark's father. You said, "This is what my father left for me." Stark turned around and looked at Li Qingyan in confusion. Yes. Li Qingyan still sat as steady as a rock. This is the topic he left for you before he died, and the truth has been kept in the secret archives of S.H.I.E.L.D. The design blueprint of the science and technology exhibition he left for you is the model of this element. Stark fell into silence. He was thinking about some things related to his father. When he was a child, he did see something similar to this element model, and even saw it not long ago. It was on the design drawing of the next Stark Industrial exhibition that Pepper sent her. Are you from S.H.I.E.L.D.? Stark looked at Li Qingyan suspiciously. He now suspected that Li Qingyan was not a genius, but a spy. He learned the secret information his father left him from S.H.I.E.L.D., and then deduced that this information could create a new element, and then he happened to know that he was now poisoned by palladium and needed. Thinking about it, Stark suddenly froze. There are too many coincidences in this. How could a person have so many coincidences and then use these coincidences to deceive himself? His idea didn't make sense, at least not at all. That is, Li Qingyan is definitely not an ordinary person, but he must have extremely high talent in this area, so he can deduce all of this with the slightest clue. Li Qingyan just sat on the chair and looked at Stark quietly. In fact, the big clock has been reading information from Stark's brain. He was skeptical at the beginning, and he contradicted himself later, and now he is still half convinced. Li Qingyan is just an ordinary person. He has no advantage when facing Stark. But Li Qingyan has the most powerful auxiliary tool in the super god universe. Big Clock. The god of death, Karl, has obtained the authority to use the big clock. With the help of the big clock, he has gradually become the master of the most advanced technology in the super god universe, and is the top god who finally breaks the balance. But now, with Li Qingyan relying on the big clock, even if he is just a poor young man, he can easily control Iron Man. I could have given you other elemental plans, but I believe that this one must be the best for you. Li Qingyan said lightly, and then added, "This business is a guaranteed profit for you." Yes, this business is a sure profit for Tony Stark and Iron Man. Because if no new element can be found to replace the palladium element, he will definitely die. Of course, this business is a sure profit for Li Qingyan. Because he doesn't have to pay anything at all. He only needs to use his words to get the funds and materials he needs. Stark fell into deep thought for a long time. He was thinking about Li Qingyan's identity and true purpose. At the same time, he is also waiting for further simulation results of Jarvis's data model. Even if he is sure of it at first sight, this data model can create entirely new elements. But he still didn't know how powerful and useful the element was. He needs to test the expected effect through Jarvis's simulation calculation. And of course the final result was smooth. The effect and power of this new element can definitely replace the palladium element, and it may even be stronger. I accept this deal. What is your final requirement? Stark accepted the goods provided by Li Qingyan, and now, it is time to negotiate compensation for Li Qingyan. The funds needed, as well as the list of supplies I need, are all given to you. Li Qingyan said, and then, a detailed report was transmitted to Jarvis's intelligence system. When Stark learned the specific situation through Jarvis, he was stunned for a moment. The amount is okay, it's only 200 million, but the materials required are quite astonishing. Among these materials, some are extremely expensive, some are extremely dangerous, and some are so rare that they cannot be purchased with money alone. For these materials, I'm afraid even if I search the entire Earth, I won't be able to find even 10 copies. What, are you having trouble? Stark hesitated, but Li Qingyan asked him a direct question before he could say anything. The big clock has noticed the thoughts in Stark's mind at this time, so Li Qingyan wants to block Stark before he refuses. They say that you, Iron Man, are the only superhero in the world, and you are also a world-famous rich man. You can't even afford such a small thing, right? Seeing that Stark was still hesitant, Li Qingyan gave him a little more motivation. The proud Stark would never allow anyone to look down on him. Although, these materials are very precious and rare. But this is not impossible for Stark. After all, with his wealth and his reputation as Iron Man, he can get anything that exists on this earth. You give me what I want, and I will naturally give you what you want. Stark's tone was low. In order to maintain his pride, this time, he was really bleeding profusely. It's more expensive than buying a building in an instant in Avengers 2, or having the entire beachside villa be blown up. 200 million was nothing to him, but to collect all the materials in the list given by Li Qingyan, he would not only have to spend more than 10 times the money, but also pay a lot of favors for it. After all, some materials cannot be bought with money and can only be exchanged for his reputation as Iron Man. This is 200 million in cash. The materials you need will be delivered to you after a while. Stark waved his hand casually, and under Jarvis's control, a cash transfer of 200 million yuan was transferred to Li Qingyan's account. Then Stark put on his armor and left. He had to go back to collect those materials and explain to Xiaojiao why these funds were used. More importantly, he had to go back and use the data model provided to him by Li Qingyan to synthesize real elements to replace the palladium element. After Stark left completely, Li Qingyan took out his mobile phone and looked at the message just sent by the bank. Although he is a time traveler, the big clock has arranged everything for him long ago. Everything in the room where Li Qingyan was originally was transported through time with him. Naturally, Li Qingyan's bank card, ID card, etc. also came with him. With the power of the big clock, it is too simple to directly bind the bank card and ID card to the banking and civil affairs systems of this world. Moreover, this sudden binding will not leave any traces on the network. No matter who it is, when they do research, they will definitely regard Li Qingyan as a person who originally belongs to this world. Why only these 200 million? Li Qingyan was a little puzzled. 200 million may be a lot for an ordinary person, but for a billionaire like Stark, it is as drizzle and not worth mentioning. The list of materials I gave Stark is the most valuable. The cash is just incidental. Big Clock is not polite to others. As a computer, he will only maximize his advantages. The moment it decided to let Stark help collect those materials, asking Stark for money became secondary. Just by the way, aren't we going to recruit scientists to help? Aren't we also going to prepare a lot of equipment? What are these 200 million enough for? Li Qingyan was a little puzzled. Although materials are the most important thing, even if they have the materials and no money, they still can't do what they want to do. These 200 million are enough as startup capital. The big clock communicates with Li Qingyan without any obstacles through the Bluetooth headset. With these 200 million, with my absolute control over the information network, it won't take long for it to become 20 billion. The big clock said this, and Li Qingyan was inexplicably stunned when he heard what it said. Yes, there is a big clock. Before, he couldn't do anything because he had nothing. But now, he already has 200 million yuan of capital. Based on this, relying on the operation of the big clock, is it still a problem to make money? Now, you should adjust your state. The big clock reminded. Li Qingyan, as a time traveler and a cheater, is still the same as an ordinary person at this moment. Li Qingyan has been in a state of confusion all day. He was woken up by the ringtone of the big clock in the morning, and it took him a long time to accept the existence of the big clock and the fact that he really traveled through time. Iron Man was summoned, but the whole negotiation process was basically controlled by the big clock. Now, the basic conditions are in place, and it's time for Li Qingyan to act on his own. But the problem is, I'm still confused. Li Qingyan also wanted to sort out his thoughts and figure out what he should do next more quickly. But things happened too suddenly. He woke up and became a time traveler. He bound the big clock and fooled Iron Man. Li Qingyan has spent half of his life in a busy and muddle-headed way. Apart from work, he only thinks about picking up girls. When has he ever thought about what he should do after becoming a time traveler? In the following time, Li Qingyan chose to lie quietly. Back in the dormitory, in his most comfortable rental house, he thought quietly. He thought of the time before he traveled through time, and the girl he liked. If he hadn't traveled through time, he would probably pursue the girl further, and maybe they would be together soon, and then get married and have children. Of course, it is also possible that the pursuit would fail, and the two would eventually separate and continue to live their own lives. But no matter what the result is, it has nothing to do with him now. He has arrived in another world and embarked on another life. In this life, he is destined to be extraordinary. But how should he take this extraordinary road? Big clock. This is the biggest trump card in Li Qingyan's hand, and the only trump card. In a dangerous world like the Marvel Cinematic Universe, if he doesn't want to die young, he needs to use this trump card to the extreme. The advice given to him by the big clock is to let him become a super soldier in the shortest time. Only by becoming a super soldier can he truly complete the lock with the big clock in dark communication. But is it really okay to become a super soldier? This is the Marvel Cinematic Universe. The big clock is very strong, but it is the strongest auxiliary in the Super God universe, not the strongest in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Here, there are infinite gems that can dominate the universe. Here, there are supreme magicians who can cross dimensions. Here, there are time conquerors who manipulate the multidimensional universe. It is not enough to rely on the big clock alone, far from enough. We must master stronger power based on the big clock. In Li Qingyan's mind, this idea gradually became clear. At this moment, the big clock, which has been paying attention to Li Qingyan, also issued a new command at this time. The big clock hidden in the dark universe kept flashing silver light. Then, its dark data began to integrate into the Marvel Cinematic Universe and began to synchronize with the dark energy of this world. The big clock is the greatest celestial computer in the known universe of the Super God universe. It is the computing cloud of the Shanhe civilization to simulate the entire universe. It stores all the science and technology studied by the Shanhe civilization for 200,000 years. It also stores the upgrade methods of the 4th generation divine body and the 5th generation divine body, phantom body, as well as various void technologies studied by the god of death Karl. It also stores the technology of void creation and time travel. It stores the evolution of the triangle for tens of thousands of years and has ways to deal with the triangle. The big clock is undoubtedly the pinnacle of technology in the Super God universe. Now, it has reached the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Li Qingyan is unwilling to be limited to the pinnacle of the Super God universe. He wants the big clock to unfold a more grand dimensional world. So, the big clock also began to exert its strength. It began to calculate and explore the essence of the Marvel Cinematic Universe and its more secrets. The big clock is a computer, it is an auxiliary tool, and it will operate according to the ideas of its owner. Li Qingyan cannot sense the situation of the big clock now. But the big clock is always paying attention to everything related to Li Qingyan. Unknowingly, Li Qingyan fell asleep. But when he woke up again, the thoughts in his mind were already very clear. He knew what he should do. As the big clock said, becoming a super soldier is the foundation. Now that he has the financial foundation, it is time for him to walk out of this small rental house and explore this strange world. Next, he will find scientists who can help him prepare those medicines. In the Marvel Cinematic Universe, there is one scientist like this who is the most famous, because in addition to being a scientist, he is also the most destructive superhero on Earth. The Hulk's body, Dr. Bruce Banner. It is an extremely risky approach to find Dr. Banner. First of all, as long as Dr. Banner loses control of his emotions, he will turn into Hulk, and Hulk's random slap can kill Li Qingyan now. Secondly, Banner is the most outstanding doctor of biology and chemistry on Earth. If the medicines provided by the big clock are seen by Banner, he will be the most likely person on Earth to deduce super gene medicine. But Li Qingyan still decided to find him. And the reason for finding Bruce Banner is also very simple. Because he is the most likely person to assist him in completing the development of super gene medicine in the shortest time. An innocent man is guilty of possessing a treasure. Li Qingyan now has the big clock, but he has no ability to protect himself, which is the biggest danger for him. Only by becoming a super soldier in the shortest time and truly mastering the big clock can Li Qingyan be the best. So, he would rather take risks and go to Bruce Banner. Of course, Li Qingyan is not unprepared to go to Bruce Banner. With the big clock, he can clearly sense Bruce Banner's current situation. His emotional fluctuations, the approximate time when the Hulk in his body may appear, and the escape plan in an emergency. That's right, this time when he went to find Banner, Li Qingyan had even prepared the escape plan in advance. Although it is risky, you have to be fully prepared. Under the investigation of the big clock, Lee Ching-yun found the specific location of Bruce Banner. It was located in a suburb of British Columbia, an area with few people. At this time, Banner had just experienced a transformation, and his emotions and physical stress were in the most relaxed state. That is to say, in this short period of time, he will not transform into the Hulk. This was a good opportunity for Lee Ching-yun to approach Bruce Banner safely. When the helicopter appeared outside the wooden house, it startled Bruce Banner inside the house. He jumped up with nervous nerves, then quickly walked to the window and looked up at the sky. When he found that the helicopter was only for civilian use, and there was only a young man coming down from it, a trace of confusion appeared on his face. "Hello, Mr. Bruce Banner." Lee Ching-yun walked towards Banner, and the helicopter behind him left directly after he came down. Not leaving a way out for himself, going alone, this gave Bruce Banner a great sense of security. The originally tense nerves were completely relaxed. But at the same time, he felt more confused. "Who are you?" Banner didn't know Lee Ching-yun, and he didn't know what the young man wanted to do with him. He was still alert now. "Lee Ching-yun." Lee Ching-yun answered, and took out a document from his pocket. This was a document that Lee Ching-yun had printed out before coming here, a map of the genetic drug and the analysis of the Hulk gene in Bruce Banner's body. Hulk's genetic map. Banner felt weird after looking at the top portion, but his expression changed drastically when looking at the bottom portion. Banner has analyzed Hulk's genetic map countless times, but he has never analyzed it so clearly. "How did you get this map? And it's so detailed." Banner looked at Lee Ching-yun in surprise. If he had such a detailed and clear genetic map, he might have been more confident about Hulk's situation. "I can't tell you exactly how it was done. Regarding the big clock, he couldn't reveal it casually. But I can tell you that I am here this time just to help you solve this huge problem about Hulk." Lee Ching-yun wanted to ask Banner for help, and the best reward for Banner was naturally to help him control the Hulk's rampage. "Can you help me take down the Hulk?" Banner was surprised, but there was also excitement in the surprise. Because of Hulk's existence, Banner cannot live a normal life. He even feels that he is no longer a human being. If he could really defeat the Hulk, he would be willing to pay no matter how high the price was. It's not about solving the Hulk, it's about solving the trouble that the Hulk causes. Lee Ching-yun didn't want to get rid of Hulk. Although this fool looked scary, he was actually quite cute. When I first watched the movie, Lee Ching-yun laughed so hard when I saw him blasting Loki with a hammer, taunting Thor, and smashing the elevator in anger. "What's the meaning?" Banner looked at Lee Ching-yun doubtfully. "The Hulk is not scary. On the contrary, his existence is actually a blessing for the Earth. Hulk is lucky." Banner couldn't understand that the Hulk, who was afraid of everyone and was destroying wherever he went, could actually become a kind of luck. Isn't this ridiculous? If one day, a group of aliens launch an invasion, their purpose is to destroy the entire Earth. And in your hands, there is a weapon that can wipe out all aliens at the expense of a city. Then are you willing to do this? Lee Ching-yun asked back, and his words made Banner fall into deep thought. With his intelligence, he naturally understood what Lee Ching-yun meant. But is this metaphor appropriate? There will really be an alien invasion, and when the aliens invade, will Hulk really be willing to deal with them? In the final analysis, all this is just a hypothesis. This is not just a hypothesis, this is actually going to happen. Lee Ching-yun has seen the thoughts in Banner's mind through the big clock. "I know that you don't want Hulk to affect your life anymore. I will also help you and let you live a normal life first. Things that have not happened are not enough to describe a person. Or only tangible benefits can impress a person more. I have an anesthetic here that can put a person into a deep sleep. Even the second personality in your body cannot wake up alone while you are sleeping." Lee Ching-yun took out a tube of medicine from his backpack. This was prepared by Lee Ching-yun from the hospital before coming here. During the preparation process, Lee Ching-yun added some other ingredients according to the prompts of the big clock, so that the effect of the anesthetic was sublimated. If a person doesn't sleep for a long time, he can't relax mentally. If you want to prevent Hulk from appearing, it will become more difficult. Lee Ching-yun delivered the potion to Banner's hands. "I know you can't believe me for no reason. So, you can give it a try tonight. If it works, we'll talk about the follow-up tomorrow." Banner took the potion with hesitation in his eyes. He was thinking whether to try it or not. He was also observing and judging whether Li Qingyan was a liar. Perhaps, he is the same as General Ross, but he just wants to deal with himself. Whether I'm a liar or not, there's no harm in giving it a try. Li Qingyan said, you can even try to commit suicide. Even if there is something wrong with this potion and it kills you, it will still be regarded as understanding your wish. If he can't be killed, it's better to let Hulk go berserk here than to go berserk in an uncontrollable state someday, isn't it? Li Qingyan's words completely convinced Banner. As Li Qingyan said, he has even tried to commit suicide, so what else can't he try? If this potion works, it will be a great help to him. Moreover, the potion was successful, which proved that everything Li Qingyan said was true. Maybe he would be able to get rid of a series of troubles caused by Hulk in the future. Even if it fails, even if there are problems, it is nothing more than a runaway. Okay, I can try. Banner agreed, determined. Now, you can go back and wait for me. No, I'll just wait here. When Li Qingyan came, he rented a one-way helicopter. The big clock told him that the anesthetic would definitely work. And Li Qingyan has absolute trust in the big clock. No, I stand by my opinion, you have to leave. Banner is also very determined on this point. The last time a scientist was overconfident, it led to a huge disaster. Therefore, Banner must be reserved at all times. If you want me to believe you, you have to fully respect me. Banner stared at Li Qingyan. Li Qingyan understood that he could only give in on this point, otherwise, Banner would never believe him. Understood, I'll call the helicopter back now. Li Qingyan said, taking out his mobile phone and calling the helicopter pilot. The helicopter was still halfway back at this time, and it immediately turned around after receiving the notification. For a generous boss, they can be on call at any time. When the helicopter came back, Li Qingyan bought a mobile phone from a pilot and threw it to Banner. When you really believe in me, contact me. This was the last sentence Li Qingyan left. Banner took the phone and just nodded, without saying much. The helicopter took off again, taking Li Qingyan away. On the helicopter, Li Qingyan was silently paying attention to Banner's situation. This genius scientist with 7 doctoral degrees was the first helper chosen by Li Qingyan. He had great expectations for Banner. Big clock, how did Banner act? Li Qingyan typed on his phone. He believed it. He will be injected soon. We will get his reply at this time tomorrow. The sound of the big clock was transmitted to Li Qingyan's ears through Bluetooth. As judged by the big clock, Li Qingyan received a call from Bruce Banner the next day. Dr. Banner, who had been depressed for a long time, became cheerful for the first time in a long time. Li Qingyan found a helicopter and went to pick up Banner in person. Then he directly bought a private jet and returned to his flower garden. The crazy harvest of the big clock in the financial market has turned the 200 million in Li Qingyan's hands into 2 billion. Therefore, when Li Qingyan spends money now, he does not need to hesitate at all. Furthermore, Banner's identity is too sensitive. If he just takes the opportunity to leave through ordinary means, he may not be able to attract a large number of General Ross's troops immediately. As for the surveillance on the way to the airport, under the secret control of the big clock, there will naturally be no problems. They just need to avoid large crowds. How did you get the anesthetic, and why can even Hulk fall asleep together? On the plane, Banner couldn't help but start asking questions. Banner has a doctorate in biology and chemistry, and in this field, almost no one can match him. But even so, Banner has never been able to find a similar potion. What Li Qingyan mastered was completely beyond his expectation. You can see for yourself. After Li Qingyan finished speaking, he moved his right hand casually in the air, and a message was transferred to the tablet on the table between the two of them. Spread out on the tablet is the entire recipe for the anesthetic. Banner looked at the formula and was so surprised that he didn't know what to say. Really, this recipe is amazing. Judging from the list, the most common raw materials are used, and most of the entire formula is just ordinary anesthetics. It's just that a little bit of other things were added to the anesthetic, and then the entire drug's efficacy was greatly enhanced. The most important thing is that this potion seems to have been developed for Hulk. It seems to have some kind of effect that can suppress Hulk's violent factor. This potion was specially developed for you, you can keep it. Li Qingyan said. However, I have to remind you in advance that although this potion has the effect of suppressing Hulk's rampage, it cannot completely prevent Hulk from appearing. Moreover, any coercive means to prevent the Hulk from appearing are in vain. As your mutated second personality, he will still appear as long as you are alive. If you want to completely solve the trouble he brings, the best way is to master the method of coexisting with Hulk. Living with the Hulk. Banner looked at Li Qingyan doubtfully. How can he coexist with Hulk? He is an ordinary person, but Hulk is a monster who only knows destruction. The Hulk is you, and you are the Hulk. Remember this, and slowly you will understand how to coexist with the Hulk. Li Qingyan had no intention of directly telling Banner the solution. Moreover, if you tell him directly, you may not be able to succeed. Because in many cases, you need to experience the whole process yourself in order to understand each other. If Hulk cannot be completely controlled, wouldn't it be a huge hidden danger if you take me to a crowded place now? Banner still felt that it would be most suitable for him to hide in a sparsely populated place. Didn't narcotics give you the opportunity to regulate your emotions? Didn't you say it can't keep Hulk from coming out forever? Yeah, it can't keep Hulk out. When Li Qingyan said this, he paused for a moment. But it can extend the time for Hulk to come out, and during this time, I need you to help me develop the potion in the first information I gave you yesterday. This is the real reason why Li Qingyan came to Banner. Use Banner's talents in the fields of biology and chemistry to help him complete the production of super genetic potions faster. The first information. Banner suddenly remembered the first information he saw yesterday. It was a piece of information similar to the super soldier serum. At that time, he just glanced at it casually and thought it was collected by Li Qingyan. He was the information on the super soldier serum that he researched before becoming the Hulk. But now, Li Qingyan said that he wanted him to develop it, and he suddenly realized that the information seemed to be different from what he was studying at the time. He quickly dug out the information from the backpack he brought. After reading it carefully, he was confused. Although, he still couldn't see the true power of this super genetic potion. But based on the materials he saw, and after careful consideration and judgment based on those materials, he already understood how special this potion was. If this potion can really be developed, its power might be even more powerful than the super soldier serum. Banner has studied the super soldier serum, and he is very familiar with this situation. He believed that this genetic potion material must be more comprehensive than the super soldier serum and easier to succeed. It is bound to be stronger than the super soldier serum. Li Qingyan has never doubted this. At most, it will only create super soldiers like Captain America. But the super gene potion is the starting point for a super warrior. It can be upgraded step by step and eventually become a divine body or even surpass a divine body. However, this potion does not seem to be comprehensive. After careful study, Banner also discovered some problems. Lack of an activation program. Li Qingyan had no intention of hiding it. In fact, the moment he decided to find Bruce Banner, he already understood that this genetic potion could not be completely concealed from him. However, only Li Qingyan can master this activation procedure. Moreover, there are some special things in this genetic potion that have not been fully added. Banner can know the effect Li Qingyan wants, but he absolutely cannot imitate it. Coupled with the constant monitoring of the big clock, let alone Banner's imitation of the potion based on the information, even if he had similar thoughts, he would be discovered by Li Qingyan immediately. Is it gamma energy irradiation? Banner murmured. But the last time I tried, it resulted in the appearance of the Hulk. As soon as he thinks of the Hulk, some of the thoughts that arise in Banner's mind will be immediately suppressed. It's not that I don't believe you, but I still want to keep some key information about this genetic medicine. Li Qingyan told Bana Ming directly. I understand that I will not ask any more questions during the research process, and I will not leak this information to outsiders afterwards. The information given by Li Qingyan was not complete, and the last most critical step was not revealed. This is enough to prove Li Qingyan's attitude in this regard. All Banner wants is to control the Hulk. On this basis, everything else is not important to him. The plane landed quickly. Under the guidance of Li Qingyan, they soon came to a manor. This is the latest one bought by Li Qingyan. As the place where he will live and study in the future, this manor must be large enough. Moreover, there are some hidden spaces under the manor. In the next few days, before Stark had collected all the materials, Li Qingyan and Banner rearranged these underground spaces. Some necessary equipment, as well as the devices that Banner was used to using. In addition, Banner also arranged his room and set up a large number of alarm devices. This is to prevent Hulk's sudden rampage. These alarm devices will sound the alarm immediately after Hulk's rampage, and the alarm can spread to a radius of more than 10 kilometers. 4 days later, a transport plane of Stark Industries appeared in Li Qingyan's manor. In this transport plane are all kinds of materials that Li Qingyan needs. It has been more than half a month since the two completed the transaction. The reason why it takes so long is mainly because Stark synthesized the new elements first after returning. Palladium poisoning is not pleasant. If he can create a new element sooner, he can get rid of the pain sooner. Besides, if the new element cannot be created, he will give all the materials to Li Qingyan early. Isn't it worth being cheated? And, most importantly, many of those materials are extremely scarce. Even with the strength of Stark Industries, it costs a lot of money and takes a lot of time to collect them all. Stark Industries, are you still in touch with Iron Man? Banner was a little surprised to see that it was a transport plane from Stark Industries. It's just a business deal with Stark, Li Qingyan said, and on the transport plane, the staff of Stark Industries were constantly moving the materials down. Among these people, there was a woman with brown hair, wearing a black work suit, but her proud figure could not be concealed. She directed the other staff members, and after all the materials were moved down, she even held a clip and walked directly towards Li Qingyan and Banner. Moreover, as she walked over, she showed a hint of surprise for a moment. She was surprised that Banner was around Li Qingyan. This charming woman was the Black Widow, a very popular S.H.I.E.L.D. agent in the Marvel Cinematic Universe and one of the first generation of Avengers. She was assigned by S.H.I.E.L.D. The big clock reminded, and Li Qingyan had already understood this. Natasha Romanoff, codenamed Black Widow, was originally a spy responsible for gathering intelligence. Wherever she appeared, S.H.I.E.L.D. must have begun to suspect. There is no doubt that S.H.I.E.L.D. must have learned some information about Li Qingyan from Stark. Knowing that it was Li Qingyan who provided Stark with new element information. Knowing that Li Qingyan collected these precious materials through Stark. Knowing that Li Qingyan had equipment far beyond the current world technology level. These 3 pieces of information alone were enough to attract the attention of S.H.I.E.L.D. And now, seeing Banner is actually beside Li Qingyan, this further proves the necessity of this investigation. Sir, this is the list of materials to be handed over, please sign for it. The identity of the Black Widow now is an ordinary employee of Stark Industries, responsible for the transportation of materials this time. Yes, Li Qingyan nodded, and then took the document from the Black Widow. First, he pretended to look carefully, and then signed his name at the bottom of the document. When facing Stark and Banner, Li Qingyan pretended to be mysterious and omniscient. But at this moment, when facing Black Widow, he pretended to know nothing. As for the reason, it is naturally to avoid the attention and suspicion of S.H.I.E.L.D. Stark and Banner, Li Qingyan wants to coax them into the trap, so he naturally has to show enough ability to make them believe that he really has the ability to solve their troubles. But it is different when facing S.H.I.E.L.D. Li Qingyan wants to avoid being paid too much attention by them. At least before he becomes a super soldier, he has to avoid S.H.I.E.L.D. directly attacking him. After all, he is just an ordinary person now. If S.H.I.E.L.D. knew his intention and sent people to control him by force, he would not be able to resist even with the help of the big clock. If he was caught and locked up, he would have no hope of becoming a super soldier. Stark really keeps his word. He sent all the materials I asked for. Li Qingyan said this not to Black Widow, but to Banner next to him. I don't know much about him, but with his status, he will do what he says. Banner took the list from Li Qingyan and observed it carefully. Embedded fullerene, this material is extremely precious. Just 1 gram here is worth 100 million pounds. While Banner was speaking, he took the list and walked to an extremely sophisticated box in the list of materials. Inside was embedded fullerene, the most rare and precious substance on the earth today. It's just that it's not the most expensive in this list of materials. According to the list, some other materials may not be as expensive as embedded fullerene, but because the amount required is larger, the total value is more valuable than it. These materials can exchange for Stark's life. In comparison, the little wealth paid is nothing big. Li Qingyan followed Banner, and it looked like he was helping Banner. Palladium poisoning, this is indeed a very serious problem. Banner didn't know how to care about Li Qingyan's performance at the moment. After immersing his thoughts in scientific research, this genius scientist is no longer particularly concerned about external affairs. Not far away, Black Widow has always been observing Li Qingyan's every move, and also observing Banner's every move. And now, from the performance of these two people, she has seen a lot of information. Li Qingyan and Banner have a good relationship. Banner knows all the transactions between Li Qingyan and Stark, and maybe he is in a dominant position in it. However, Black Widow, who is good at exploring the essence through appearances, still saw something else. How could Li Qingyan, a young man in his early 20s, handle all of this so well? Banner, what do you think of that girl? Just when Black Widow was doubting, Li Qingyan's words, which seemed to be deliberately lowered in his voice, reached Black Widow's ears. The Black Widow, who was wondering whether Li Qingyan was pretending, suddenly heard Li Qingyan's words and scratched her head in embarrassment. Just now, I felt strange because Li Qingyan's behavior was too polite. After all, I look so beautiful and have such a hot figure. How could a young man with a strong temperament not react at all when he saw her? But when I turned around, I realized that this was a hypocrite. He was just pretending not to care about her in front of him. In fact, he had already fallen in love with him. It's just in front of me, I don't have the nerve to show it. Ha, that girl. Banner turned around and looked at Black Widow. Unlike Li Qingyan, who seemed to be hiding deliberately, this one was looking at it blatantly. Now, Black Widow felt even more uncomfortable. Ahem. She pretended to cough twice, then turned and walked towards the transport plane. Everyone, the mission is completed, let's go back. Black Widow said, and the other Stark Industries staff began to return to the transport plane one by one in an orderly manner. Well, you look pretty good, but depending on your age, it doesn't suit you very well. Banner said this very casually. Black Widow wears a special monitor. She can hear Li Qingyan's deliberately lowered voice. Naturally, she can also hear Banner's words. Why is it inappropriate? I'm 23 now. Although she's older than me, she's only a few years older at most. It's nothing, right? Li Qingyan is acting in his true colors. A young boy has a crush on his beautiful elder sister. Black Widow. When I first watched the movie, the number of people who thought a lot about her would be 8 million if not 10 million, right? Of course, after learning about her identity later, many gay men began to change their minds. But this does not hinder that there are still a large number of people who simply appreciate her body, appearance. Well, Banner didn't know what to say for a moment. From a pure appearance point of view, Black Widow does look very good. But for some reason, Banner always felt that Black Widow was not simple, and she and Li Qingyan were obviously not the same person. However, at this moment, the cabin of the transport plane had been closed. Black Widow, along with other people from Stark Industries, had already taken off on a transport plane. Looking at the transport plane going away, Li Qingyan didn't need to continue acting. He returned to normal and returned his attention to the material in front of him. Although liking to appreciate beautiful women is one of his good qualities, what Li Qingyan needs most now is to develop a super genetic potion first. Only after becoming a super soldier, completely mastering the big clock, and possessing sufficient self-preservation ability can he dream about other things. How long will it take you to process these materials? Li Qingyan asked. Banner glanced at the list carefully and began to make rough calculations in his mind. At the same time, on the transport plane, Black Widow was already transmitting the report of her investigation to Nick Fury in the Tri-Wing building at S.H.I.E.L.D. headquarters. Nick Fury was sitting in his office, looking at the report coming from the computer. Li Qingyan and Banner are together. This is a young man with outstanding talents. It seems that Li Qingyan and Banner have a close relationship. It is suspected that the transaction with Stark was jointly planned by the two. One by one, the evaluations about Li Qingyan analyzed by Black Widow were presented in front of Nick Fury. However, these comments made Nick Fury frown. In the past, Black Widow's investigation and evaluation of a person were always very regular. But this time, there are obviously some differences in the evaluation, and there are more uncertain guesses. Nick Fury looked at these comments and thought for a moment. In the end, he decided to pay more attention to Lee Chingyan and Banner. Agent Hill. Nick Fury picked up the phone nearby and called Agent Hill in the secretary's office not far from the director's office. Sir. Agent Hill's answers were always timely. Apply to the congressman for an extension of the report, and then transfer a few people to go to Asia. Nick Fury has already become suspicious of Lee Chingyan. Although he still didn't know what he suspected, but just in case, he needed someone to pay attention to Lee Chingyan and Banner's every move. Okay, sir, came Agent Hill's answer. Subsequently, under Hill's arrangement, a team of S.H.I.E.L.D. agents secretly traveled to Asia to the outskirts of the manor where Lee Chingyan and Banner were located. In the manor, Lee Chingyan and Banner were studying super genetic potions. These guys from S.H.I.E.L.D. are really haunted. Lee Chingyan naturally knows every move of S.H.I.E.L.D. Nothing on this earth can escape the supervision of the big clock. This was unavoidable. The sound of the big clock reached Lee Chingyan's ears through the Bluetooth headset. S.H.I.E.L.D. monitors abnormal events around the world. You made such a deal with Stark, and now you have brought Banner here. S.H.I.E.L.D. will definitely keep an eye on you. What I'm most afraid of right now is being targeted by people like them. Lee Chingyan complained. He is just an ordinary person now, and he needs time to make super gene drugs. But these things must not be known to government agencies such as S.H.I.E.L.D. If Banner and Stark knew, they would not care. But if S.H.I.E.L.D. knew, they might come to rob. If they were regarded as potential threats, they might come to control them immediately. With Banner here, they dare not act rashly. The big clock analyzed. From the current monitoring situation, Black Widow does not suspect you, and Nick Fury's suspicion is just a feeling. As for those spies who appeared around the manor, I will make sure they can't see anything. The big clock is the crystallization of the highest technology in the super god universe. With it, the effect is not just the science and technology of blocking the Earth like protons. If the big clock is willing, it can directly return the entire Earth to the steam engine era. All modern industrial products involving information and signals can be directly controlled by the big clock through dark communication, and even directly destroyed. Nowadays, humans habitually rely on information networks, so under the control of the big clock, they will never know the most real situation. Yes, Lee Chingyan knows the ability of the big clock. With the big clock, these situations outside are still within the controllable range for the time being. Now, he only needs to complete the development of the super gene drug in the shortest time. Lee Chingyan's manor, hidden in the underground laboratory. Not every one of these materials needs to be used in gene medicine, right? Banner is gradually processing various materials according to the plan given by Lee Chingyan. As time goes by, he has gradually discovered some problems in these materials. For example, embedded fullerene, the most expensive substance on Earth, is actually used to make small portable atomic clocks, which is the most accurate timing system on Earth. But why does a super gene need a timing system? Even if it involves another use of embedded fullerene, making the GPS navigation system of unmanned vehicles accurate to 1 mm, this has nothing to do with super genes. However, Lee Chingyan only smiled slightly at Banner's speculations and did not answer. Not all the materials here are used to synthesize super gene medicines. The reason for this arrangement itself is to conceal people's eyes. As for which materials are useful and which materials are useless, Lee Chingyan will not tell anyone, even Dr. Banner, whom he chose. Have all the materials been processed? Lee Chingyan did not answer Banner's question, he directly changed the subject. Banner also saw that Lee Chingyan did not want to answer him. And he also understood that everyone would have some secrets that they did not want others to know. For something as important as the super gene potion, Lee Chingyan secretly prepared something which he could understand. It has basically been processed according to the plan you gave. Banner answered, and in his hand was the last batch of materials that had just been processed. Well, thank you for your hard work. Lee Chingyan walked in front of Banner and said sincerely. I have been busy for more than half a month, and I have to take a good rest. Banner deliberately avoided him. He was going to leave Lee Chingyan a space to proceed with the next step. Going to rest was just an excuse he found. Okay. Lee Chingyan agreed, and Banner, at this time, walked out of the laboratory without hesitation. When he walked to the door, Banner couldn't help but look back. But in the end, he still left. Even though he was very curious about how to synthesize the super gene potion and what materials were needed. But his conscience told him that he shouldn't steal it if others didn't allow it. As a scientist, he would definitely be unhappy if someone wanted to take away the scientific research results he had studied. Li Qingyan was in the laboratory, looking at these materials, but his brows were slightly frowned. The next few things had to be done by himself, but he had never done these things before. The synthesis of this super gene potion must be very precise during the material fusion process, and his mentality must be extremely calm. Standing in place, Li Qingyan took a full 5 minutes to adjust his thoughts to the point of being calm. The excitement of becoming a super soldier. The consequences of failure. All the messy thoughts need to be completely thrown away. The big clock has been detecting Li Qingyan's thoughts. Only when the big clock feels that Li Qingyan can really calm down will it let Li Qingyan start to execute the operation. Time was passing quickly. It took nearly 3 hours from the time Li Qingyan started to fuse the materials to the time he finished the whole process. Because he was unfamiliar with this kind of thing, he was very careful in every step. But it was precisely because of his carefulness that he finally completed the synthesis of the super gene potion without any mistakes. The potion in Li Qingyan's hand, which was emitting a faint blue light, was the super gene potion synthesized by Li Qingyan. He let out a long breath of turbid air. Li Qingyan's nerves had been tense for nearly 3 hours, and he finally relaxed at this moment. Looking at the super gene potion synthesized by him in front of him. The excitement that had been suppressed in his heart was also expressed at this time. His heartbeat began to accelerate, so much so that Li Qingyan could hear the sound of his heart beating. Drink it. The sound of the big clock rang in Li Qingyan's ears. Drink. Li Qingyan was a little surprised. Shouldn't it be an injection? For example, like Captain America, use a special device to inject, and then attract a lot of energy. It's not as complicated as you think. The big clock interrupted Li Qingyan's guess. Captain America's trick has little to do with the super soldiers of the Super God Academy. Drink it, and you don't need to worry about anything after that. The big clock reminded. Super soldier gene, this is a very special thing. In the Super God universe, on Earth, this super gene can be hidden among a large number of people on Earth. They have been passed down from generation to generation, but they have always been the same as ordinary people, without any special features. But once activated by a special program, these super genes hidden in the human body will begin to appear, allowing the body of an ordinary person to quickly transform into a super soldier. In the Super God universe, when the power of the galaxy was activated, it happened to be passed on to Zhe Xiaolun's generation. If it was 20 or 30 years earlier, the people who were chosen might be other people in the Zhe family. For example, Zhe Xiaolun's second uncle, Zhe Erdan. Therefore, super genes, whether through inheritance, drinking the potion directly, or any other means, are no different. Super genes must be activated in a special way to really work. This is also one of the reasons why the big clock has allowed Li Qingyan to not worry about the secret recipe of the super gene potion leaking from the beginning. Drink it, the big clock urged. Li Qingyan lowered his head and looked at the tube of blue potion in his hand with some hesitation. He just blended a large amount of various materials in it with his own hands. This thing can almost collect a periodic table, right? Li Qingyan complained, but in the end, he still brought the tube of potion to his mouth. Li Qingyan raised his head and poured it all into his mouth. The medicine entered the mouth and quickly entered the body through the throat, and then, as the body organs operated, it began to be transmitted throughout the body. Then, Li Qingyan was a little confused. Why? He lowered his head and observed himself carefully. He even clenched his fists, wanting to feel the changes in his strength at this moment. However, there was no effect at all. Is this medicine fake? Li Qingyan asked suspiciously. Why, after drinking this thing, it feels like drinking a tube of boiled water. Except for the strange taste, there is no feeling at all. Li Qingyan was very confused at this time. He wanted to ask the big clock what was going on. But the big clock seemed to have completely disappeared at this time, and did not respond to Li Qingyan's questions. He wandered in the laboratory for a long time. In the end, he began to doubt whether he had taken the wrong medicine and even lost the big clock. Somewhat lost, he walked out of the laboratory and walked to the ground. When he opened the door of the laboratory and stood on the lawn of the manor, in the east, a strong golden light suddenly shone. The sun that had just risen should have been the most gentle time of the day. But at this moment, the light was extremely strong, and the moment it shone on Li Qingyan, it produced an extremely hot temperature. At this moment, the sun seemed to be stimulated and emitted an unprecedented strong light. At this moment, everyone in the whole East could clearly feel that the energy of the sun seemed to be lost. The island country, which was enjoying a good life in the daytime, Hawaii, which was approaching dusk, and the Pacific Ocean at noon, were rapidly weakening the sun's light. In the ancient eastern country where the sun had just risen, the sun was stronger than ever before, and the sun's light was particularly strong and concentrated in one place. It was located in a small city at the top of the South China Sea, on the edge of the continent, in a huge manor. Li Qingyan stood there blankly, facing the sun, watching it emit stronger light than ever before. Feeling the heat on his body and the drastic changes in his body's genes. It should have been very uncomfortable, but at this moment, he was more excited than ever before. The loss of thinking that he had taken the wrong medicine and that the big clock had left him turned into an unprecedented excitement at this moment. He knew that what he was feeling was the baptism from the sun, which was the stellar energy mobilized by the big clock to activate the super gene in his body. In the villa of the manor, Banner also sensed the drastic changes in the outside world, and he walked to the window as quickly as possible. Through the glass, he saw Li Qingyan in the yard below and saw a magical scene he had never seen before. That was the light of the sun that illuminated the entire earth. At this moment, all of it gathered into a line and was constantly gathering on Li Qingyan. It was as if a ray of light in the dark night just hit the bright red flag. However, it was daytime now, and the sun had just risen. The surroundings looked bright, but because the light gathered on Li Qingyan was too strong, it seemed that everything around was in darkness. At this moment, there were many people who were as dumbfounded as Banner. Pedestrians who were originally in a hurry on the street. An old man who got up early and practiced Tai Chi in the park. A shield agent hiding around Li Qingyan's manor, secretly observing the movements in the manor. In a luxurious villa on the seashore somewhere in San Diego, Iron Man, Tony Stark, was observing this scene through a satellite. In a stealth transport plane over America, Nick Fury, the director of S.H.I.E.L.D., is about to go to investigate a secret incident. At the foot of Mount Everest, the highest mountain in the world, there is a special courtyard hidden in a village. This is Kamar Taj. At this moment, in the center of this courtyard, there is a bald female wizard wearing a yellow robe, the supreme sorcerer, the Ancient One. This unprecedented scene has alarmed all the big figures hiding in the shadows on the earth. The irradiation of the starlight lasted only a few minutes. But these few minutes are enough for the world to remember for a lifetime. Those who saw it with their own eyes, those who only saw the magical landscape, and those who later saw the scene at that time through the video. Such a scene seems to be described by only two words. These two words are, miracles. Welcome to the world of super god technology. A mechanical voice echoed in Li Qingyan's mind. Li Qingyan's vision changed from dazzling white light to a dark starry sky. This is a strange realm, this is Li Qingyan's dark matter plane, because this scene is exactly the same as the environment where Jie Shaolun was when he just awakened the galaxy power gene. You are, super gene system? Li Qingyan asked doubtfully. Yes, a mechanical voice answered. Because you have been forcibly bound to the big clock, I am also bound to the big clock. I am also the big clock. The mechanical voice explained. You are the big clock. Li Qingyan was a little surprised. The big clock is not in such a stiff state. It was clearly felt before that the big clock was like a living person, a good friend who was invisible but very reliable, helping Li Qingyan through the most difficult period after crossing. The big clock is just a computer, it has no life. The mechanical voice continued to answer, and the magnetic voice seemed to become cold and stiff in Li Qingyan's ears at this moment. How did the familiar voice that made him feel kind suddenly become like this? It is obviously a very good companion, but now you say it is just a machine. According to the calculation of the big clock, you who just crossed over may have a certain rejection of the cold machine, which is not conducive to your better acceptance of the reality of crossing. So, he simulated your voice and personality, and began to guide you in the way you can accept most. Now that you have become a super soldier, the simulation program is no longer needed. The super gene system, or the intelligence system of the big clock, is helping Li Qingyan resolve his confusion. You said you were a machine, and you should be able to respond to the operator's requests, right? Li Qingyan shook his head and looked at the starry sky, asking. Yes, without any hesitation, the super gene system gave an answer. Then, I order you to continue using the original program. Li Qingyan also made his choice without any hesitation. He crossed over to a completely unfamiliar world, and finally had a reliable partner, but you made me feel that it was just a machine. Who can easily accept this? Understood, the mechanical voice answered, and then it fell into a brief silence. After a while, a voice sounded again. This time, the sound of the big clock, which was very similar to his own voice, has returned to what Li Qingyan is familiar with. Big clock, Li Qingyan asked a common-sense question. Yes, the big clock gave the answer, just as Li Qingyan felt at the beginning. Well, very good, this is the feeling. Li Qingyan nodded with satisfaction. Big clock, why did you just say that you were just a machine? Li Qingyan sat down cross-legged. Now, in this dark matter plane space, although there is nothing around him, he does not feel lonely or empty. On the contrary, he felt very friendly here. It was as if he was in his original rental house. This is a territory that truly belongs to him, completely belongs to him. The celestial computer is a machine in itself. The big clock answered without any hesitation. But, you should be beyond the scope of the machine, right? Li Qingyan was still confused. As the highest tech crystallization of the super god universe, your artificial intelligence system is absolutely extremely powerful. Stark's Jarvis, and even Ultron and Vision later, are probably not as smart as you, right? What I possess is not wisdom, but knowledge. Knowledge. Li Qingyan repeated this word. Tell me, what are the specific differences? Li Qingyan was very curious about how the big clock positioned itself, and how it positioned Ultron and Vision. The Great Clock is the greatest celestial computer in the supergod universe. Since its birth 200,000 years ago, it has been used as the core information processor of the Kamigawa civilization. The big clock began to give Li Qingyan a detailed explanation. As a celestial computer, I have stored everything in the Kamigawa civilization's 200,000 years. Humanities, ideas, history, technology, imagination about the future, and many unrealized technological solutions. It can be said that I am the super god universe, the highest crystallization of current technology. The big clock has a reserve of knowledge that surpasses all people and things in the current universe. So, you are the most powerful person in the universe at the moment. How come you are not smart? Li Qingyan couldn't help but start to interject. Because in his opinion, a big clock that has accumulated such a huge amount of knowledge and mastered such advanced intelligence is clearly the most powerful mechanical life form. No, you got it wrong. Where is wrong? Li Qingyan was puzzled. I am currently the strongest in the universe, but true wisdom is constantly surpassing. Quote. At this moment, Li Qingyan was stunned. He finally grasped the key in the big clock's answer. Wisdom is constantly transcending. Perhaps the biggest difference between the big clock, or celestial computer, and humans and super soldiers comes from this. I was born during the period when the Divine River civilization officially transcended the pre-nuclear civilization. I represent the highest technological crystallization of the Divine River civilization. But for more than 200,000 years, every technological advancement has not been led by me. The big clock paused for a moment, and at the same time, a large number of images, pictures, etc. began to appear in the dark matter plane space. 20,000 years ago, Mr. Dinghe, the greatest scientist of the Kamigawa civilization, created me. 200,000 years ago, Dinghe formulated the super warrior plan to try to break through the limits of life, which is when the god-making plan began. 20,000 years ago, due to Kiran's risky attempts, the first generation of super soldiers was officially born. After that, with the efforts of generations of scientists, super soldiers were upgraded from the first generation, to the second generation, the third generation, the divine body, the invincible body, the fourth generation divine body, the phantom body. Every time these technologies were upgraded, the big clock was still the pinnacle of technology at that time, but every technological breakthrough came from the creation of life, not the creation of the big clock. The big clock's explanation made Li Qingyan suddenly enlightened. Why does the big clock say that it is just a machine? Why does it say that it only possesses knowledge, not wisdom? Because the big clock only has the ability to record, analyze, simulate, and calculate, but it does not have the ability to create. In the super God universe, the big clock can only calculate the known universe because the wider universe is beyond its knowledge. In the super God universe, the big clock can record the upgrade plan of the divine body, but it cannot break through the limits of the divine body to create a new divine body, because its calculations can only be made based on real-life data. That's the limit for big clocks. It is very powerful because its computing power and stored knowledge surpass all other celestial computers, surpass any gods and super warriors. But it is also very weak, because it cannot rely on itself to transform the knowledge it possesses into entities for practice, let alone create something beyond its knowledge reserves. The huge system it has allows it to provide powerful support for one, multiple or even an entire civilization, making it show off its power and be omnipotent. But for such a huge system, if there is no controller, it will just be a machine placed in a corner. No matter how powerful it is, it will not be able to function and can only accumulate dust in the endless years. The celestial computer and its owner have a mutually reinforcing relationship. Because there are super soldiers who control the celestial computer can do anything. Because of the assistance of the celestial computer, super warriors can become gods who dominate a civilization or even the entire universe. Only those with true self-thinking can be called living entities. The celestial computer, from the moment it was created, did not have the ability to think for itself. We only conduct simulations and calculations within the known data. The big clock said, this is the commonality of all celestial computers in the super God universe. If you don't have the ability to think for yourself, you won't become a real living being. If you don't become a real living being, there won't be a situation where machines dominate life like in some science fiction movies. It's not that big clocks and other celestial computers can't do this. It's because their supercomputing power has already made them clearly realize that machines cannot surpass life. Reason can create the best present, but it cannot expand the infinite future. Only irrationality is the basis for creating everything. Without irrational human thinking, there would be no emergence of human civilization. Without irrational scientific attempts, modern science and technology would not have happened. Without irrational creative ideas, there would be no leaps in scientific development one after another. Ding He, who created the Great Clock, has calculated and simulated the birth and development process of the entire universe. How could I not understand the connection? The big clock that records everything about the entire Kamigawa civilization naturally already understands all this. Therefore, whether it is a large clock or other celestial computer, from the moment they are created, their rational thinking will also let them understand this. Therefore, all celestial computers themselves are just machines. Even if they have the knowledge reserves of the entire super God universe and can provide all the optimal solutions to problems in an instant, they are still just machines that assist super soldiers and gods. Chapter 11. The analysis made by the big clock greatly expanded Li Qingyan's thinking. All the assumptions of artificial intelligence rebellion in the real world are just because their thinking is not broad enough. Artificial intelligence that really stands at a high enough level will not have the idea that they are higher than life. Although, you are just a machine and can only assist the person who owns you. But in my heart, you are also my best and most important partner. Li Qingyan stood up. He understood what the big clock said, but this did not prevent him from liking the big clock. Okay, you have been in the dark matter plane for too long, go back to the real world. After the big clock finished speaking, Li Qingyan's thoughts had come out of the dark matter plane. When he returned to the real world, what he saw in front of him was the sun that had risen completely, and the grass that was still covered with dewdrops. Hey, are you okay? Banner asked anxiously beside him. It's okay, nothing. Li Qingyan turned his head and looked at Banner. What happened just now? Did the super gene potion take effect? Banner didn't understand why the sun's rays gathered on Li Qingyan just now. But based on the cause and effect, it is very likely because of the super gene potion that Li Qingyan asked him to make. Otherwise, how could the sun's rays gather for no reason? Yes, Yes. Li Qingyan nodded vigorously. Yes, this was caused by the super gene potion. As for how this scene was formed, Li Qingyan didn't intend to tell Banner all the information about the big clock. What exactly is this super gene potion, and how could it cause such a big commotion? In Banner's memory, even when Captain America injected the super soldier serum, it only used half the city's electricity. Moreover, it was World War II, and the power of industrial power generation at that time, even if it was half a city, was only as powerful as the power consumption of a small district now. But now, Li Qingyan directly mobilized the solar energy of the entire Earth. In an instant, all the energy of the sun shining on the entire Earth was concentrated on Li Qingyan as much as possible. According to the energy level calculation, this time, I am afraid it will exceed Captain America's time by dozens, hundreds, or even more times. Super Gene Potion. Li Qingyan was actually wondering what Super Gene Potion was. Is it like the super soldier serum injected by Captain America to strengthen the human body? But it is obvious that Super Gene Potion is much more powerful than super soldier serum. If you want to calculate it seriously, it is more like a key to unlock the super gene code. Its function is to open the shackles of human genes and pave the way for everything that follows. A real super soldier is not just an ordinary person who has improved his physical fitness through drugs. As early as the early days of Shinhe civilization, through drugs and thermonuclear radiation under the control of galaxy-level material computers, human life could break through to thousands of years. But this most primitive genetic modification cannot exceed the limit of life. Therefore, under Jillin's suggestion, Dingahe began a new round of attempts, and super soldiers came into being. In the old era, it was because every step of the gene process was firmly controlled under the powerful galaxy material computer, which was stable but also stifled the innovation ability of the gene. But the gene modification for Li Qingyan was the great clock produced when the Shinhe civilization developed to its peak, and it also recorded the long years after the destruction of the Shinhe civilization and the birth of the Super Seminary. It even recorded the void technology studied by the god of death Karl. It was the great clock after Jillin, who became the principal of the space school, uploaded all the time and space data he studied. Therefore, the super gene upgrade for Li Qingyan by the great clock can be said to have enabled Li Qingyan to achieve it in an instant and in one step. He broke through the limit of life and became a real super soldier. Even the dark matter plane has been opened for Li Qingyan in this process. Beep, beep. The sound of sirens suddenly came from outside the manor. In the sky, a helicopter was approaching quickly. In the direction of the rising sunset in the distance, 2 Quinjet transport planes were flying towards this side. Li Qingyan frowned slightly. He is now a super soldier, directly connected to the big clock through secret communication. Li Qingyan can also see what the big clock can see. Those who are gathering quickly and flying in the distance are all from S.H.I.E.L.D. Logically speaking, the territory of the Eastern Power will not be easily set foot by outsiders. But this is the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and the Eastern Power is actually one of the participating countries of S.H.I.E.L.D. Among the 5 members of the Security Council of S.H.I.E.L.D., there is a seat for the Eastern Power. This is a world setting, and Li Qingyan has no way to change it. This is just like in our novels, the powerful organization established by the Eastern Power can also interfere with other countries in the world. The Marvel Cinematic Universe is originally a world setting created by others. What's going on? Banner turned around and looked at the helicopter approaching quickly, and looked at the large number of fully armed agents who were breaking through the door and climbing over the wall from the door. It's from S.H.I.E.L.D. Li Qingyan took a step forward and stood in front of Banner. Here, letting Hulk come out would not be of any benefit to Li Qingyan. Therefore, in terms of pressure, it is best for Li Qingyan to handle it. Just break down the door. Do you want to declare war? Li Qingyan's voice came out. Although the volume was not very loud, it reached the ears of everyone in S.H.I.E.L.D. at the same time. Even the Black Widow, who was still in the Quinjet transport aircraft in the distance, could hear it clearly. Everyone, stop first. Black Widow quickly gave the order, and all the soldiers who were rushing towards Li Qingyan stopped on the spot and entered a state of preparation. However, the weapons in their hands were always aimed at Li Qingyan and Bruce Banner. Chief Fury. Black Widow contacted Nick Fury at the headquarters. At this time, she must seek Nick Fury's advice before taking other actions. How's it going? Nick Fury has been waiting for the information ahead. The scene of mobilizing the entire Earth's solar energy in an instant is really terrifying. Li Qingyan seems to have some special superpowers. Besides, Banner is right next to Li Qingyan. If he uses brute force, I'm afraid he will go berserk. Black Widow reported. Nick Fury fell into a brief thought when he heard this situation. The news caused by Li Qingyan has successfully shocked the whole world. As someone who specializes in handling mysterious incidents like this, S.H.I.E.L.D. cannot sit idly by at times like this. But is it really appropriate to directly use strong methods to deal with Li Qingyan and Banner? Wait a minute, go over and talk to them first. In the end, Nick Fury suppressed the idea of acting violently directly. Faced with two potentially dangerous characters, it's best to negotiate first, if possible. Yes, sir. Black Widow received the order and immediately ordered everyone to start slowly retreating, keeping a distance from Banner and Li Qingyan. The Quinjet arrived at the manor, and Black Widow walked out of the opened hatch alone. The last time she came, she was disguised as the head of Stark Industries, but this time, she is officially representing S.H.I.E.L.D. The tight-fitting uniform made his figure even more proud. We are S.H.I.E.L.D. We have detected that the core point that caused the global solar weakening half an hour ago is here, so we came here to investigate. Black Widow directly stated her intention, but her eyes fell on Dr. Banner. She was on guard, fearing that this man would suddenly go berserk. The Hulk is the most terrifying monster in the Marvel Cinematic Universe at this stage. The military is completely powerless and S.H.I.E.L.D. is unwilling to provoke him. Investigation. Can you just blow open the door of someone else's house through investigation? Li Qingyan is now a super soldier and has the capital to confront these S.H.I.E.L.D. agents. Now Li Qingyan can no longer disguise himself so carefully. I'm telling you, if you destroy my door, you will have to pay for it. Li Qingyan is not short of money, but if something that belongs to him is damaged by others, compensation is necessary. If it turns out that we were wrong, we will pay compensation, and we will pay double the compensation. Black Widow answered. The last time I saw you, you were deliberately pretending, right? Black Widow withdrew her attention from Banner. Although she would still pay attention to him at all times, she was more focused on facing Li Qingyan. According to S.H.I.E.L.D.'s investigation, you did not know Banner at all when you contacted Stark. You found Banner after you completed the deal with Stark. The purpose was to let Dr. Banner handle the large amount of precious materials you obtained from Stark for you. S.H.I.E.L.D.'s global intelligence collection capabilities are still outstanding. Although the whole process of Li Qingyan's search for Banner was handled very secretly, they still found out after a while. After all, from the time Li Qingyan crossed the Pacific to the Americas, although the big clock could process all electronic products records of Li Qingyan's travels, it could not control the people he met along the way. Just like the helicopter pilots, they are not Li Qingyan's people. If S.H.I.E.L.D. finds them, they will not hide it. Yes. Now that S.H.I.E.L.D. knows about it, Li Qingyan no longer hides it. Your acting skills are so good, you even fooled me. Black Widow really regarded Li Qingyan as Banner's helper. But in the end, Banner was Li Qingyan's helper. The person who was originally in charge of everything was regarded by Black Widow as a worker who was dominated by others. She had never made such a huge mistake before. Acting. I didn't act at the time. Li Qingyan acted in his true colors. Although he was acting, it was actually his true state at that time. I really think you are so cute. But, Banner said you are too old for me. Well, Banner, who was standing behind Li Qingyan, was stunned when he suddenly heard these words. Is it allowed to say this in front of a woman? What woman would not be angry when hearing such words? It's okay, you are right, I am much older than him. Black Widow looked at Banner and spoke in a voice that still seemed kind. But everyone could see that there was a hint of anger in Black Widow's eyes. But I think being older is okay, right? Li Qingyan also pretended not to notice the Black Widow's anger. We are about 10 years apart now, but in 10,000 years, won't this difference be negligible? 10,000 years later, how can anyone in this world live for 10,000 years? Black Widow felt that Li Qingyan was just like those adolescent boys who liked to talk. Yes, I can, Li Qingyan answered seriously. However, his seriousness seemed more like a joke in the eyes of Black Widow. Sir, please be more serious, Black Widow said helplessly. Serious. I've always been serious. What Li Qingyan said has always been the truth. I came here to investigate the reason why the sun's energy was suddenly diverted. Since you are serious, can you tell me what is going on? Black Widow was speechless to Li Qingyan. She could only bypass Li Qingyan's rhythm and forcefully start asking questions. But Li Qingyan just didn't follow her ideas. Black Widow wanted to know about the situation of solar energy being diverted, but Li Qingyan was stunned and refused to answer anything related to it. Why don't you believe me? Li Qingyan said in a helpless tone. I'm telling the truth, why do some people think I'm joking? Banner, what's wrong with this guy? Li Qingyan turned around and looked at Banner as if to verify. Banner felt more and more embarrassed at this moment. He knew that Li Qingyan was deliberately avoiding the topic, but he also felt that Alexander was always using him as a scapegoat. If I'm under too much pressure, I'll go crazy. Banner thought so in his heart, but he didn't say it out loud. He could only shake his head helplessly and then take a few steps back. My work is done. I should find a place with fewer people and rest for a while. Banner actually had a hunch. He felt that Hulk might come out soon. Although the anesthetic given by Li Qingyan could make it easier for him to adjust his mood. But Banner himself had a fear of living in a crowded area. He was afraid that going crazy in such a place would cause too many casualties. If this kind of thinking lasts too long, Banner's mood will become more and more gloomy. Why look for a place with few people? Didn't we agree that after you help me with the potion, I will help you find a way to control Hulk? Li Qingyan interrupted Banner. Now, your work is done, and then it's time to start my research. If you leave now, won't it make me break my promise? Li Qingyan now seems to have completely forgotten about Black Widow. Black Widow, who originally wanted to know about the situation of solar energy, has now become a pair of underwear hung outside the windowsill, which is embarrassing for anyone who sees it. Can you stop talking about other things all the time? The Black Widow was so embarrassed at this time. She interrupted Banner and Li Qingyan directly, and even stood between them. Drive Banner, you are in a good situation now, there is no need to hide. Li Qingyan, if you continue to be so dishonest, I will let the people from S.H.I.E.L.D. use force. First to Banner, then to Li Qingyan. The Black Widow wanted to calm both of them down. Oh, Banner could only nod helplessly. But Li Qingyan kept sighing. I told you a long time ago that I am very serious, why don't you believe it? If you do this again, I will really take action. The Black Widow couldn't help it anymore, and put her hand on the gun at her waist. Well, if you don't like it, I won't say it. Li Qingyan stopped talking. Drive Banner, let's go to the laboratory. Li Qingyan turned his head and said to Banner. You haven't answered me yet, about the solar energy. Black Widow was really a little angry. If she wasn't afraid of irritating Banner, or if she didn't know whether Li Qingyan had superpowers, she really wanted to rush over and push Li Qingyan down. Well, she pushed him down and handcuffed him. No, I haven't eaten all night, I'm a little hungry, how about we go eat something first? Li Qingyan ignored Black Widow directly. Yeah, I'm hungry too. Banner nodded. He knew that Li Qingyan didn't want to answer Black Widow, so he followed Li Qingyan's meaning and helped him change the subject. Black Widow now understood that it was absolutely impossible for her to get an answer from Li Qingyan. The other party didn't want to talk at all, and there was no point in her asking. In that case, why not wait for a while? What are you going to eat? You want to eat too? Li Qingyan looked at Black Widow, and Banner did the same. How can you have time to eat breakfast when you fly here so early in the morning? Black Widow rolled her eyes at Li Qingyan in frustration. She was originally in Asia, and she was in a place where the sun was just rising in the morning. Otherwise, she would not have come here in such a short time. I want to eat white porridge and noodles, do you want to eat? As long as he didn't ask about the solar energy being withdrawn, Li Qingyan would not care about anything else. Noodles, what? Black Widow was puzzled. Soon, they arrived at a small town near the manor and sat in a breakfast shop. There are people sitting at every table here now, but they are all fully armed soldiers. Li Qingyan brought Black Widow and the others here, and also brought a whole team of S.H.I.E.L.D. soldiers here. Now, a group of them are crowded in this breakfast shop, but they scare other customers away from coming in. A big chopstick of rice noodles, a sip of rice soup. white porridge with rice noodles, nice. Li Qingyun's relaxed look was not affected by any shield agent at all. On the contrary, because he finally became a super soldier, Li Qingyun was in a very happy mood at the moment. He quickly finished one portion. Boss, another portion. Li Qingyun called out loudly. Black Widow and Dr. Banner looked at him in surprise at this time. Poor boy, you haven't eaten for a few days, how can you eat so much? The proprietress came over with the mixed rice noodles, frowned at the 3 or 4 empty plates on the table. In the past, Li Qingyun, even if he had a good appetite, would only eat 2 plates at most, and that was without white porridge. But today, he had 3 or 4 portions of white porridge with rice noodles. Young man, being able to eat proves that you are in good health, Li Qingyun said, and then took the rice noodles from the proprietress. In good health. The proprietress was a little skeptical about this. But at this time, she looked at Li Qingyun's condition and there seemed to be nothing wrong, so she could only give up. In fact, Li Qingyun is in good health now. After becoming a super soldier, the energy consumption will increase, and the regular food supplement will naturally increase. Unless Li Qingyun can fully adapt to replenishing through cosmic energy, otherwise, the amount of food he eats will become larger and larger. But under normal circumstances, no matter who has just become a super soldier, it is impossible to fully do it all at once and replenish himself with energy alone. From ordinary people to super soldiers and gods, this requires a process of transformation. Because Banner knew Li Qingyun's situation, he also guessed about it. Black Widow didn't understand, but she believed that Li Qingyun was not the kind of person who would mess around, so there must be a reason for Li Qingyun's eating so much, but she couldn't guess the reason. Whip rope is coming here. Li Qingyun's movements suddenly stagnated, and this scene made the boss and the boss's wife, who had always been paying attention to this side, immediately speed up their heartbeats. They were afraid that Li Qingyun would eat too much and die here. But Li Qingyun was just stunned for a moment, but did not show any other symptoms. Whiplash, the villain in Iron Man 2. Li Qingyun slowly resumed eating noodles, but his attention had already shifted to other places. Yes, he came from America. It seems that the target should be you. The big clock has the ability to monitor the world, and no disturbance can escape its monitoring. Why would he come to me? Shouldn't his target be Iron Man? Li Qingyun couldn't understand why Iron Man's enemies didn't go to Iron Man, but came to find him. He was originally going to find Iron Man, but on the way, he found out about you providing Iron Man with a new element plan, so the target turned to you. The big clock has read the whipcord's thinking information. How did he know that it was me who provided Stark with the plan? Li Qingyun just called Iron Man over at that time, and not many people knew about the entire transaction process. S.H.I.E.L.D. has amazing power and has been monitoring Iron Man for a long time. They know and understand. But how would Whiplock know? He is a blacklisted person, so he has to smuggle himself into a beautiful country, right? Where did he get the means to investigate Iron Man's situation and dig himself out? Whipso smuggled into the beautiful country. He originally wanted to attack Iron Man, but because he couldn't find a chance, he exposed himself instead. Hydra tried to force Stark to hand over the iron suit and arc reactor-related technology through Congress, but failed. So, they wanted to obtain the corresponding technology through Whiplash, so they used intelligence to sell me out. After hearing what the big clock said so much, he finally understood. This is why Hydra failed to get Iron Man's technology, so it pushed itself out and used it to vent its anger on Whiplash. Hydra, this group of people hiding in S.H.I.E.L.D., when one day I master the ability of the super soldier, I will definitely find them out and punish them severely. After Li Qingyun traveled through time, in addition to gaining the ability to obtain super god technology through the big clock, he finally had his first target, a target to attack. He doesn't like to take the initiative to meddle in other people's business, but if someone provokes him first, then the grudge must be recorded. Hydra, they got it together on their own. The same goes for this whipcord. What's his logic? Li Qingyun was speechless. Just because he gave Iron Man an upgrade plan for new elements, Whiplash regarded him as a target. Without the plan you gave, Iron Man would have been tortured by the palladium element and would eventually die in pain. Now, with the new element, the palladium crisis is naturally lifted. Moreover, Iron Man has developed a new generation of steel suits based on this, which is even more powerful. Whiprope lost the opportunity for a sneak attack. The big clock described Whiplock's entire line of thinking in one breath. Lee Chingyun's face turned dark after hearing this. What is the logic of this whipcord? Without his own help, would Iron Man have died of palladium poisoning? His father had already prepared this technology for him, right? What Lee Chingyun did at that time was just to give him a slight advance, a few months ahead of schedule. You are already a super soldier, you can definitely fight him. The big clock knew what Lee Chingyun was thinking at this time, but in the big clock's view, fighting was not a bad thing for Lee Chingyun. At the very least, this can be used to test the various data of Lee Chingyun's current body. You just became a super soldier and you go to war with a supervillain. Lee Chingyun hesitated. He now has no understanding of his physical fitness. He is like Jie Shaolun when he first awakened. Even if he has top-level strength, he can only throw his fists ignorantly. Whipcord is not an ordinary person. He has an exoskeleton suit, and the two whipcords in his hands are filled with a large amount of electric current and are extremely powerful. Although these electric currents cannot kill you, it will be very painful if you are shocked. He's coming into town soon. The big clock reminds. That won't work. Lee Chingyun stood up suddenly. If it was just an experiment for himself, he wouldn't have to do it. But if the whip rope is allowed to enter this small town and destroy the place where Lee Chingyun finally found it, where he can experience the atmosphere of his hometown, he will never agree. What's wrong? Black Widow looked at Lee Chingyun blankly. Here comes a guy named Whiplash. He has an arc reactor and an exoskeleton suit. He is a super criminal. Lee Chingyun said, then turned and walked towards the outside of the breakfast shop. Whipcord. Black Widow looked slightly confused. Everyone, get your weapons and follow Lee Chingyun. Although it is still unclear who Whiplash is, there is no doubt that the two conditions of the arc reactor and the exoskeleton suit have explained everything. The other party is a super criminal, so S.H.I.E.L.D. has the obligation to take him down. Banner hesitated. He also wanted to see what happened. But he was even more worried that if he was affected and transformed into the Hulk, it would be a bigger crisis. Therefore, he finally chose to stay in the breakfast shop. Lee Chingyun, who was the first to set off, had already reached the edge of the town. Through the information provided by the big clock, he knew that Whiplash had also reached the edge of the town at this time. Turning the last house, he saw his target. It was a Western man covered in black robes. At a glance, both sides recognized each other. Whiplash pulled the black robe on his body, revealing not the simple exoskeleton in the movie, but a complete set of steel armor. Although this armor is also very simple, it is similar to the Mark I steel armor made by Iron Man. The outer layer of steel covers all the vital parts of his body, making him immune to ordinary bullet attacks. There is no arc pulse cannon, no various missile configurations, but this set of armor is enough to greatly improve Whiplash's combat effectiveness. At the very least, it is impossible to kill him with simple gunfire. At this moment, as he grabbed his hands behind his back and swung them, two long whips appeared in his hands. On the whips, there were arcs flashing visible to the naked eye. Whiplash was named after the two lightning whips he waved in his hands. Hey, did you find the wrong person? Lee Chingyun stood in place, looking at the first super villain he had met. Although Lee Chingyun had already prepared for such a crisis in the future. But he had contact so soon, and the person he met was someone else's enemy. This situation was something Lee Chingyun had not expected. No, Whiplash replied, this supervillain is crazy at heart, but he is still a clear-minded guy. This kind of polarizing supervillain is really not uncommon in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Lay down your weapon. The Black Widow arrived. She stood beside Lee Chingyun, and the other soldiers quickly entered the combat position, all the guns in their hands aimed at the whipcord. It's so slow, Lee Chingyun complained. We have to get weapons first. Black Widow replied casually. Is this the whipcord? Where did he come from? Black Widow still knows nothing about the whipcord situation. Detailed information can be found in S.H.I.E.L.D. Lee Chingyun had no intention of spending this time explaining to Black Widow. Now, we have to think about how to deal with this guy first. The opponent is wearing steel armor. Our weapons may be useless. Black Widow looked at Whiplash. Although that steel suit looks very low-key, this is also a steel suit. As far as the protection formed by the outer layer of steel is concerned, ordinary firearms cannot have any effect. He has no ability to fly, and his energy is very poor. If we wait for a while and his energy is used up, there should be no problem. Li Qingyan reminded. The appearance of the whip rope made him feel helpless, and the upgrade of the whip rope made him even more helpless. Hydra suddenly got involved, making the whole incident troublesome. But unfortunately, Li Qingyan is not suitable to fall out with Hydra directly. He must first master the super gene in himself so that he can truly possess the strength of a super warrior before he can gain a foothold in this world. Go to hell. The sound of a whipcord was heard, and an electric whip was swung directly towards this side. Li Qingyan had been paying attention to the situation of the whip rope for a long time. When he saw the sweeping electric whip, he moved directly behind him. Black Widow's movements were in sync with his walk. Black Widow has much more combat experience than Li Qingyan. Li Qingyan just dodged the first whip, but Black Widow had already paid attention to the attack from behind. Looking at another cable coming down from above, Black Widow hugged Li Qingyan and rolled on the spot. The cable fell to the ground, and the collision of the current with the ground sparked a large number of sparks. Li Qingyan and Black Widow, who were rolling, narrowly avoided the sparks. Ah! There was a wailing sound, and a soldier who was relatively close to the whipcord was hit by the electric cable swept out by the whipcord. Keep distance! Black Widow shouted loudly, and at this time, she had stopped rolling, released Li Qingyan, turned over and jumped up. In terms of physical reaction, the current Black Widow is better than Li Qingyan. Li Qingyan, who had only become a super soldier for less than 2 or 3 hours, was now no different from an ordinary person. Get used to the energy in you. The big clock reminds. At this time, Li Qingyan was slowly sitting up from the ground. The energy in me. Li Qingyan lowered his head and looked at his hands. He is a super soldier, but he doesn't know how a super soldier should fight, nor does he know what kind of energy he contains. But he is a time traveler. As a fan of the Super Seminary animation, has he not seen enough of the super warriors fighting in the cartoon? What model is my super gene? Li Qingyan stood up. He had to first know what form his super gene would take after he became a super soldier. Original form. Original form. What do you mean? Li Qingyan was a little confused. As a time traveler and a fan of Super Seminary animation, he knows many super gene code names. He also knows about the power of the galaxy, the god of war of Nuoxing, the light of the sun, and even those from the angel, demon, and death camps. But what the hell is this original form? There has never been such a thing in the animation of Super Seminary. This is the first model that Mr. Dinghe and Kieran first tried to experiment with, that is, the first god's super gene in the super god universe. The first god, space principle. Li Qingyan was stunned again. The first person to become a god in the super theological seminary was Kieran, the later space principal, wasn't he? At the beginning of the Super Seminary cartoon, this was the unfathomable and greatest god. The Super Seminary was founded after the destruction of Kamigawa civilization. Traveling the entire known universe provides real data for the calculations of the big clock. Presided over the creation of 3 major god-making projects. Try the law yourself and explore across higher latitudes. The genetic model of the space principle. Li Qingyan was dumbfounded. Although the space principle was one of the top gods in the world of Super Seminary, the problem was that Li Qingyan knew nothing about the space principle. In the cartoon, the space principle only appears a few times, and each time he appears in a particularly mysterious manner. Regarding the space principle, Li Qingyan only knew that he was the supreme god from the Kamigawa civilization. He was the first person in the super god universe to conduct a super gene jump experiment. He is the one who founded the Super God Academy, presided over the creation of the 3 major god-making projects, and led to the start of the Dinor Civilization War. But there is no explanation of the ability of the space principle. The original gene model of the space principle is the most standard first-generation super gene. Based on this gene, you can realize all the abilities you want. The big clock will not cheat Li Qingyan, because Li Qingyan is now its highest authority owner. Moreover, as a celestial computer, it will never provide any wrong solutions to its users. Li Qingyan also understands that the gene model of this space principle must be the best recorded in the big clock. But the question now is, how should he face the crisis in front of him? The one who is waving the lightning double whip, Whipsuo. Li Qingyan looked at the whip rope that was constantly attacking, and his mind was working quickly. He is now a super soldier, but this is a primitive model, and he has not yet started to carry any abilities. He didn't know how to exert the power of his body. But there is no doubt that as a super soldier, his physical fitness and various attributes must be much stronger than ordinary people. It would be great if I could have a handy weapon. Although Li Qingyan knew that his physical fitness was better than that of ordinary people, after all, he still had no experience to use this physical fitness. He thought in a primitive way and felt that he still had to have a weapon. It was too disadvantageous to fight a guy with a lightning whip with bare hands. Weapon. Then I'll lend you a hammer. The voice of the big clock sounded in Li Qingyan's mind. Hammer. Li Qingyan was stunned. What the hell is this hammer? On the American continent, there is a hammer that fell from the sky. The big clock answered. The hammer that fell from the sky. Thor's hammer. The only thing Li Qingyan could think of and related to it was this hammer. Yes, the answer of the big clock was just 2 words. But isn't this a bit too outrageous? Isn't there a spell set by Odin on Thor's hammer? Li Qingyan spoke with doubt. Only those who are recognized by the hammer can pick up the hammer. Do you think I am the kind of person who meets the character required by the hammer? To pick up Thor's hammer, you must have a sense of justice, be kind, and be willing to sacrifice yourself for others. Li Qingyan felt that although he was not a bad person, if you said he was kind and just, it was probably not true. As for devoting himself to others, it was even more difficult to say. He was a time traveler, and he had no relatives or friends in this world. There was no one who was worth his sacrifice. The spell set by Odin is a kind of energy suppression. I can interpret its information through calculation, and then bypass the spell itself and restart the energy of Thor's hammer itself. The big clock is the greatest celestial computer in the super god universe, and its computing power is terrifyingly strong. There is a spell set by Odin on Thor's hammer, but this spell itself is a way of applying energy. It is set on Thor's hammer through special channels to achieve the effect of sealing. This is a bit like the spell that sealed Daburn on Earth in the Super God Academy. Although the complexity and energy scale of the spell on Thor's hammer are obviously much stronger than that, the big clock can still solve it. That's great. Li Qingyan was excited. This is Thor's hammer. As long as you pick it up, you can get the power of Thor and control thunder. The whip rope in front of you is just carrying a rechargeable battery. If Li Qingyan turns into Thor, it will be easy for him to deal with this whip rope. Hurry up, bring it here. Li Qingyan was already impatient. He wanted to pick up Thor's hammer and become the one who was qualified to rule the gods in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Boom. At the moment when Li Qingyan's words fell, the whole earth, at this moment, had a strong dark energy fluctuation. The big clock began to call a large amount of dark energy and began to analyze and crack the spell on Thor's hammer. However, the mobilization of this energy also immediately alarmed a person far away in the world's highest mountain. The one who possessed the strongest power on earth and was called the Supreme Magician, Ancient One. Ji Yuyi, who was meditating, suddenly opened her eyes at this moment. She raised her head and looked at the starry sky of the universe. She could feel that in the previous moment, a strong dark energy was being called. Just like this morning, in the easternmost part of the Eurasian continent, someone called more than half of the solar energy of the entire Earth. What is going on? Ji Yuyi was full of questions in his heart, twice in a day. First, the most common light energy on Earth, and then the dark energy that ordinary people cannot touch. What kind of ability does the person behind this have to be able to achieve this level? Supreme, what are you doing? Baron Mordo, the eldest disciple of Ancient One, saw that Ancient One was acting strange, so he came here to find out the situation. Nothing. Ancient One did not answer. Regarding dark energy, even among the magicians of Kamar Taj, there are still few people who know about it. There is no need to let too many people come into contact with this powerful but difficult to control energy. Oh, Baron Mordo could see that Ancient One did not want to answer him. Pay more attention to the situation of the Holy Temple recently. Ancient One reminded. Yes, the disciple will go to the 3 temples in person to understand the situation there. Baron Mordo answered. Yeah, Ancient One nodded, then she closed her eyes again and began to meditate. And her so-called meditation has actually begun to investigate all this through magic. There was a person on Earth who could control solar energy and dark energy, and on such a large scale. She must find such a person and get to know him better. At the same time, in the Far East, in a small coastal city, Li Qingyan is waiting for the arrival of Thor's hammer. The big clock mobilized dark energy to break the spell set by Odin on Thor's hammer, in order to make this hammer with powerful power a weapon that Li Qingyan can use at this moment. Under the cracking of the big clock, the hammer also responded quickly. Thor's hammer is located in the desert in the west of the United States in America. Here, a large number of people gathered and tried to move it out, even to the extent of pulling it with a cart. But at this time, the sky was covered with dark clouds, and a large number of lightning was wandering between the clouds. The hammer, which was originally motionless, began to shake constantly at this time, and even made a slight humming sound. This is the spell set by Odin on Thor's hammer, which is being impacted by the big clock with dark energy. This is the big clock constantly trying to move Thor's hammer. In the distant universe, in the palace of Asgard, Odin, the father of the gods, who was in the Odinsleep, had his eyelids twitching constantly. He was sleeping, but he could sense the state of Thor's hammer. Thunder flashed, and with a huge roar, Thor's hammer soared into the sky. This hammer, which no one could lift and even a small car could not pull, now flew by itself. Big clock, how long will it take? Li Qingyan was running continuously, dodging the whip attack. Relying on his own physical quality, his speed was greatly improved, allowing him to avoid being attacked by the whip. But Li Qingyan, who had no weapon in his hand, never took the initiative to attack. Maybe he was just timid, or maybe he was just cautious. But in the final analysis, this was because he did not understand his own abilities. From childhood to adulthood, Li Qingyan has always adhered to a truth. That is, the unfamiliar is the most dangerous. Whether it is a person, an object, or something that is about to happen. As long as you know it in advance, you can prepare in advance, and there will be no big problems. But if you know nothing from the beginning, you can only rely on gambling. But in Li Qingyan's life, every gamble will lose. Therefore, Li Qingyan never takes risks, touches unknown things, and believes in unknown results. The last 5 seconds. 3, 2, 1. The sound of thunder suddenly sounded in the sky. Thor's hammer was like a rocket, flying towards this side at the fastest speed. The moment he saw Thor's hammer, Li Qingyan no longer hesitated. He jumped from the ground to more than 100 meters. He grabbed the handle of Thor's hammer with his right hand. This scene made Black Widow and others who were fighting below dumbfounded. With the explosive power of this body and the power of this jump of more than 100 meters, did he need to be so cautious before? Li Qingyan was also shocked by the height of his jump. But at this moment, he had no time to think about these. The moment Thor's hammer fell into his hand, a powerful thunder force immediately merged into Li Qingyan's body. Raising his right hand towards the sky, the power of thunder was guided down and covered his whole body. Then, a set of armor composed of countless tiny scales was constantly taking shape on Li Qingyan's body. This is the armor of Thor. It is the armor of Thor that was guided by the power of Thor's hammer after obtaining the power of Thor. The armor was made by the Dwarf King of Nidavel and matched with Thor's hammer. Its performance is excellent. It will condense into different forms on different people. When Thor summoned Thor, it was suitable for Thor. When the female Thor, Jane Foster, summoned it, it was suitable for her body shape. And now, because it was summoned by Li Qingyan, this set of armor also suits Li Qingyan's body shape. Holding Thor's hammer and wearing thunder armor, Li Qingyan at this time is the real Thor. This is the power of Thor, from Asgard, the power of Thor. Although Li Qingyan really has the big clock. But this did not hinder his excitement when he turned into Thor. The first Marvel movie I watched was Iron Man, and my favorite was naturally the look of Iron Man in armor. But later, after watching Thor in the Avengers, the scene where Thor regained his divine power and summoned the armor to possess him was also equally likable. And at this moment, such a scene appeared on Li Qingyan. Although it was a bit second year, there is no doubt that this feeling is very refreshing. Whipsuo, let's see who has stronger electricity. Li Qingyan shouted loudly, with unconcealable excitement in his voice. What the hell is this? Looking at Li Qingyan, who jumped up 100 meters high, holding a hammer in his hand, wearing black and gold armor, and lightning lingering all over his body, Whipsuo was completely stunned. Come on, let's decide the winner. Li Qingyan imitated Thor, constantly rotating the Thor's hammer in his hand, and then using the inertia of its swing to drive his body to the position of Whipsuo below, and rapidly descended. Wanama. Except for the last complaint, Whip can't do anything. Although he has an iron suit. Although he has an arc reactor that can have powerful strength. But he is still just an ordinary person after all. Moreover, this iron suit is extremely simple, and it doesn't even have a good sports performance. At this moment, Li Qingyan fell from the sky, carrying the power of thunder, and he couldn't resist it at all. Even if he wanted to dodge, it was too late. Rumble. Thunder fell, and the earth collapsed. The huge impact caused a big pit to be smashed directly where Whip was originally standing. In the pit, only Li Qingyan was standing. As for Whip, he had already been smashed into the ground by his huge impact. Blood and flesh, bones are hard to distinguish. Hickey. It was the first time that Li Qingyan killed someone, and it was in this way. He couldn't help but feel nauseous. He quickly retreated out of the pit. He didn't really vomit, but he stood there motionless and took a deep breath. He relaxed his whole body and mind, and forcibly suppressed the scene he saw at that time from his mind. It was his first time to kill someone, but he had already prepared himself mentally. After he was sure that he had really traveled through time. After he knew that this was the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Li Qingyan already understood that to survive in this world, he would inevitably take this path. So, the moment he decided to take action, he had already thought that Whipsuo might be killed by himself. The reason why he still felt nauseous was that he didn't know how to control the severity of the attack. With one hammer, he smashed a person into a meat pie. It was the first time to kill someone to such an extent. Even if he made more psychological preparations, he would still feel uncomfortable. You know nothing about your own power. The voice of the big clock sounded in Li Qingyan's mind. As soon as he opened his mouth, he felt a little uncomfortable in his throat. Li Qingyan took another deep breath and adjusted himself. I know nothing at all. Li Qingyan did not make excuses for himself. He was indeed a white man who knew nothing. Even though he had been studying super gene potions with Banner during this period. Even though the big clock had told him a lot about super deep technology. But the problem is that this is his first time as a super soldier, and his first time to control the power of Thor. How could he know how powerful his hammer is? Peter Parker just became Spider-Man and destroyed his house by mistake. Li Qingyan became a super soldier, and his enhanced strength is much greater than Spider-Man. What's more, he also controlled the power of Thor's hammer at that time. Even if you don't have weapons, just bare hands, it's easy for you to defeat Whiplash. The big clock complained. However, this kind of humanized complaint is because Li Qingyan added the intelligent assistance of the big clock. In order to make communication easier. And the big clock, in real situations, will not give these statements. It will only propose the best solution according to Li Qingyan's needs, just like at the beginning. Li Qingyan needs weapons, and it gets them for him, Thor's hammer. As a super soldier, it is indeed easy for Li Qingyan to defeat a Whip. Even if he has no weapons. Even if he does not know how to control the abilities of a super soldier. But with his enhanced physical strength alone, he is enough to crush the opponent. Although, Whip will hit Li Qingyan before he gets close to him with the lightning whip in his hand. But with Li Qingyan's physical fitness, he can completely withstand it. At most, it is just that the clothes are torn and the pain of a little electric shock is just that. Because Li Qingyan did not know, he did not choose to take risks. And the big clock followed Li Qingyan's meaning and would not make such a suggestion. Are you too cruel? The Black Widow was also approaching at this time. Previously, she had been trying to entangle with Whip, but Whip destroyed her weapon with electric current at the beginning, so she could not get close at all. So, it is said that she was entangled with Whip, but in fact, Whip was chasing and hitting her and other shield soldiers. But now it seems that this embarrassed look is also good. At least, they were not affected by Li Qingyan's blow from the sky. If they were near the whip when Li Qingyan fell, even if they didn't die, they would probably be paralyzed now. Look at the range of the earth pit, it exceeds the radius of 2 meters. I accidentally used too much force. Li Qingyan was also helpless. He really didn't want to be so cruel. But before he made a move, he didn't know how much strength he had, and it became like this after this smash. The hammer in your hand. Black Widow's eyes shifted to the Thor's hammer in Li Qingyan's hand. She saw everything that happened before. Although at the beginning, Li Qingyan's reaction and movement speed were not like those of ordinary people. But what really made Li Qingyan change dramatically was the arrival of this hammer. After he jumped up and grabbed the hammer, he began to summon thunder. The armor on his body was also summoned and attached to his body after grabbing the hammer. So, there must be something wrong with this hammer. This is Thor's hammer, a hammer used by Thor, the god of thunder from Asgard. Li Qingyan tossed the hammer in his hand. Thor's hammer, Meow Hammer. This hammer is pretty good, at least in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, it is one of the few powerful artifacts. As long as you can pick it up, you can gain the power of Thor. Summoning thunder, turning into a god, strength and body defense will also increase. It can be said that as long as you have this hammer, he is the strongest god in Asgard except Odin and Hela. He is a superhero who ranks in the upper middle level in the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe. It is estimated that only a few people such as the real Thor, Captain Marvel, and the Supreme Sorcerer can beat this trial version of Thor. Thor of Asgard, the one in Norse mythology. Black Widow was a little confused. How come this thing in mythology really appeared? You said this is his hammer, so there really is Thor, right? Black Widow looked at Li Qingyan in confusion. A weapon may be very powerful, but compared to the entire mythological civilization involved behind it, it is very different. This is his hammer, and he is now in your beautiful country of S.H.I.E.L.D. Li Qingyan did not hide it, he was just hoping that S.H.I.E.L.D.'s attention could be diverted from him. It's not easy to be stared at by these annoying agents day after day. Wait a minute, Black Widow knew the seriousness of this matter. She turned around and asked the soldiers to run back to the car and get a new communication device. The eavesdropping device she had stuffed in her ears before had lost its function due to the electric current attack of the whip. Now that she had reconnected with S.H.I.E.L.D., she immediately reported what Li Qingyan said. Mjolnir, Thor, Asgard. These 3 clues were enough to make the entire S.H.I.E.L.D. on high alert. As for Li Qingyan, he is naturally still the focus of attention. He suddenly has superpowers, and can also control the mythical Thor's hammer and the power of Thor. This is obviously a very powerful superhero. However, compared with the unknown Asgard, Li Qingyan does not seem to be very dangerous. Judging from Black Widow's observation along the way and the fight between Li Qingyan and Whiplash, Li Qingyan's performance is still more in line with the personality of a normal ordinary person. Although he killed Whiplash, Black Widow judged that it was caused by Li Qingyan's mistake. When facing ordinary small-town residents, he also seemed very kind and amiable. He is a superhero who is not extremely aggressive and dangerous. At least, S.H.I.E.L.D. and Black Widow judged so. Big Clock, what is Thor's current state? Li Qingyan held Thor's hammer in his hand, but he knew that he could not occupy the hammer all the time. This is Thor's. Although Thor is not much different from an ordinary person now, his father is still watching him in Asgard. He possesses Mjolnir, possesses the power of Thor, and is a super soldier. With the assistance of a big clock, he can completely defeat anyone in Asgard. But there was only Odin, and he couldn't ignore it. If you really offend Odin, with Odin's power, don't mention Li Qingyan now. Even if he completely mastered the super gene of space principle and even upgraded to the 3rd generation divine body, he would probably not be a match for Odin. Unless Li Qingyan can upgrade to the level of the 4th generation divine body or sacred body, he also needs to have an entire dark plane space configuration. It is the configuration of the main god level. Only by reaching the main god level combat power, combined with the powerful power of the divine body and the 4th generation divine body, can Li Qingyan be able to compete with Odin. Well, it should be to this extent. Li Qingyan was extremely convinced of this idea. Therefore, although he borrowed Thor's hammer, he did not prepare it and kept occupying it. Thor is still confused and has not yet accepted the fact that he was exiled by Odin. The big clock answered. Thor, the god of thunder, he has just been exiled. Thinking of the whole process of him finding Mjolnir, smiling confidently and trying to pick it up, only to find that he couldn't pick it up again, and to accept the fact that he was exiled. Why do I think it's a little funny? Li Qingyan felt inexplicably that the god of thunder seemed a bit funny at that time. It's really funny. Give him the hammer back. We can borrow it, but if he really wants to occupy it, his family won't just sit idly by. Li Qingyan said while throwing Mjolnir into the air. As Thor's hammer was thrown high into the sky, the armor on Li Qingyan also dissipated. After all, the power of Mjolnir and Thor were just borrowed by Li Qingyan. Although such power is very strong, it cannot always belong to Li Qingyan. Therefore, if he wants to stay in a chaotic world like Marvel, the best way is to gain real power through his own means. For example, master the abilities of your own super warrior. I'm leaving. The boss has a new task that I need to handle. Black Widow walked up to Li Qingyan. This secret agent who has been at the forefront of S.H.I.E.L.D. and has been hiding in various areas to collect important information finally gave up his entanglement with Li Qingyan. Oh, Li Qingyan just responded casually. Now he is thinking about improving his abilities, so he has no time to worry about the departure or stay of a secret agent. Black Widow looked at Li Qingyan who was thinking at this time, knowing that he was thinking, but she didn't say much. Today she saw everything she should see. Li Qingyan's ability, his threat, and whether he can be absorbed into the Avengers. Well, Nick Carey likes this the most. He wants to gather all the superheroes from all over the world to form an Avengers alliance. But, will Li Qingyan take advantage of him? Obviously not. I can't get entangled in these unimportant things. I have to find a way to become stronger as soon as possible. After experiencing the powerful power of the God of Thunder, it is absolutely impossible for Li Qingyan to continue to be a weakling. Moreover, with the big clock around, Li Qingyan will never become a weakling. Banner, how are you doing there? Li Qingyan dialed Banner's phone number. Waiting for the results. Banner was a little helpless. Earlier, Li Qingyan and the others ran to fight, but he hid in the breakfast shop. Now that I think about it, I feel that I am not very righteous no matter what. Bring the car over here, we have to go back. Li Qingyan finished speaking and then hung up the phone. Not long after that, Banner drove over in his Hornet. Black Widow also called in the Quinjet transport plane, which was to leave here directly and go to other countries. As for the surrounding environment, the S.H.I.E.L.D. branch here will naturally handle it. They may even cover up the entire incident completely. In the world of superheroes, as long as someone like Iron Man doesn't like to expose himself, S.H.I.E.L.D. will help handle the rest. Those at the national level also don't want too many people to pay attention to superhero matters in this world. After all, the best way to run a country is to rely on the government, rather than a superhero or a vigilante, so what's the deal? All the way back to the manor, the situation here has returned to its original appearance. The blasted door has been reinstalled, and even the messed up lawn has been restored. S.H.I.E.L.D. has always attached great importance to this aspect, and the distribution of this large eastern country pays even more attention to details. Although they are not in the same world, there is no doubt that the attitude and style of doing things in the eastern country are still impeccable. This is actually one of the reasons why Li Qingyan still likes to live here even though he has traveled to the Marvel world. You just became a super soldier today, are you acting a little too eye-catching? Banner doesn't like to be in the limelight because he doesn't want to draw attention to himself. Li Qingyan actually didn't want to be in the limelight, but he was forced to do so today. He didn't expect that he would attract a supervillain like Whiplash, nor did he expect that his overly cautious character would cause such a big fuss. Now that I think about it, smashing someone into a meat pie with a hammer is still a bit too much. There's nothing we can do about it, it's already like this and there's nothing we can do about it. Li Qingyan could only shrug. Besides, it's impossible for people with genetic mutations like us to hide it for the rest of our lives. Li Qingyan is a super soldier, but there is no doubt that super soldiers are also genetically mutated. In the words of the space principle, without mutated super soldiers, the essential transformation of genes cannot be achieved. Although, there are already successful examples of super soldiers here, carrying out genetic evolution in the most secure and controllable way. And after evolution, it still maintains the original appearance of human beings, and even becomes more handsome and beautiful. The man is handsome and the woman is beautiful. It is certain that super genes affect appearance. Otherwise, whenever a super soldier appears in the super god universe, as long as he doesn't deliberately vilify himself, he will be beautiful. Hulk is different from you. Hulk is uncontrollable. In Banner's heart, Hulk has always been a hurdle that he can't get over. Why use it? Li Qingyan is also a super soldier now. He can easily identify which words Banner uses when speaking. Besides, the big clock is still there, and Banner's thoughts are currently under the influence of the big clock's dark communication. It's not that Li Qingyan wants to monitor Banner, but the big clock needs to determine Banner's condition at all times to prevent him from accidentally bringing out the Hulk. Now Li Qingyan, if he really encounters Hulk, he really won't be able to deal with him. Have you ever thought about treating Hulk as a human being? Li Qingyan has never agreed with Banner's idea. Although Hulk is irritable, has a strange appearance and powerful strength. But in fact, Hulk is also a human being, and a person with an independent personality. Banner himself used experiments to make himself a dual personality, but it was not Hulk's fault. Why should Hulk's personality be completely denied? Treating Hulk as a human. Banner thought, it's not that he had never thought about this question. But how can he communicate with Hulk? It has been so many years, and Hulk has always been in his body, or he is in Hulk's body. But he never appears with Hulk. How can the two communicate? Moreover, judging from the huge destruction caused by each transformation of Hulk, this is simply a monster that only knows destruction. How can anyone communicate with him? Give me some time, wait for me to get ready, then I will help you communicate with Hulk. Li Qingyan knew Banner's concerns, so he planned to help Banner deal with this matter. This was also what Li Qingyan had agreed with Banner when he went to see Banner. Banner helped Li Qingyan deal with the materials of the genetic medicine. Li Qingyan helped Banner find a way to control Hulk. However, in order to be safe, Li Qingyan must prepare in advance. Be prepared to prevent Hulk from going berserk and hurting himself. Perhaps it was because he had spent a long time with Li Qingyan. Or perhaps it was because he saw that Li Qingyan's performance after becoming a super soldier was too brilliant. So, Banner accepted Li Qingyan's proposal. After Li Qingyan was ready, he asked Li Qingyan to try to communicate with Hulk. However, if you want to communicate with Hulk, the first thing to consider is how to avoid being beaten to death by Hulk. Super soldiers, the power of the first generation of super soldiers, can't be the opponent of Hulk. The big clock first analyzed the basic conditions of both sides for Li Qingyan. Hulk's power is definitely stronger than that of the first generation of super soldiers. Therefore, using brute force and relying on resistance will definitely not work. Hulk's characteristics are huge strength, amazing defense, bad temper, violent and uncontrollable. The big clock analyzed, and Li Qingyan also knew this information. And Hulk's weakness is that he is not smart enough. Quote. Li Qingyan felt a little speechless, but the analysis in the master was indeed correct. Hulk, he really has no IQ. In addition, Hulk has no ability to fly. No ability to fly. A flash of inspiration came to Li Qingyan's mind. No ability to fly means that there are some specific conditions that can restrict it. Based on various conditions, the best way to deal with Hulk is to use a wormhole. The big clock directly gave the best solution. This is not only able to directly control Hulk, but also the easiest ability for Li Qingyan to master at this stage. Afterwards, in front of Li Qingyan, the big clock made a complete simulation video. That was the Hulk in a rampage state. He tried to attack Li Qingyan, and Li Qingyan set up a wormhole in front of him and let Hulk fall into it. Then, the exit on the other side of the wormhole was set in midair. Afterwards, when Hulk called out the wormhole, a wormhole was also set up directly below the wormhole. In this way, the wormhole will directly form a loop in midair, and Hulk will fall into an infinite free fall state. Just like what Doctor Strange did to Loki. This method is very good, but what if Hulk uses the Thunder Palm? Li Qingyan raised his doubts. Although Hulk can't fly, he has one more skill than Loki. That is the move of slapping his palms together to generate gamma energy to form a storm. This move can change Hulk's position in the air, and when he has this move, it will be difficult to get close to him and communicate with him. Because, in the state of continuous freefall, Hulk will inevitably become more violent. At this time, if he sees the person who caused him to fall freely appear in front of him, even if he can't hit him with his fist, Hulk will have to keep slapping the thunder palm. You can build a wormhole framework and completely block it in 3 connected wormholes, so that even if he moves, the result will still be the same. The virtual projection began to change. It was an area constructed by 3 wormholes at the same time, blocking all directions at the same time. Hulk was in it, and no matter how he adjusted his position, the result would only fall into the wormhole again. Moreover, the energy storm produced by its thunderbolt palm can only blow on his body, and it is impossible to affect the space outside the wormhole. The wormhole itself is transparent and has no specific shape. Therefore, Li Qingyan can stand outside the blockade of the wormhole and talk to Hulk slowly. Well, there is no problem now. Li Qingyan looked at the model structure and could already guess the situation at that time. To open 3 wormholes at the same time, and to calculate the impact of the energy burst by Hulk on the wormhole at any time, the energy to maintain the wormhole. Li Qingyan remembered some conditions for opening the wormhole. The wormhole needs to be opened with the help of Li Qingyan. It requires Li Qingyan to understand the relevant knowledge of wormholes, and then use his super gene to sense the ubiquitous micro-wormholes in the universe, and then use dark energy to expand the wormhole and open it. The relevant knowledge of wormholes can naturally be provided by the big clock. But it is not easy to learn and achieve such a level. You just need to learn how to sense and open the wormhole. I will be responsible for the specific energy maintenance. Is it a problem for the big clock to maintain the energy of the wormhole? The big clock is limited because it is a machine. Otherwise, does it need to rely on Li Qingyan's power? Okay, you are really good. Li Qingyan understood the meaning of the big clock, and he also understood what his current situation was. Since the birth of this big clock, which of its controllers is not the top god in the universe? Dingahe, the greatest scientist of Shanhe civilization who created it. Traveling the universe to verify the truth of the big clock's calculations, he also founded the space principle of the Super God Academy after the destruction of Shanhe civilization. He walked at the forefront of the Super God universe in the void field and opened the void era of the death god Karl. Look at Li Qingyan again, this is just a rookie and a blank slate. Do you need to revoke the humanized intelligence? The big clock felt Li Qingyan's mood at this time. As the best celestial computer, the big clock has the most advanced artificial intelligence system in it. It will always provide the best solutions for its controllers. No need. Li Qingyan refused decisively. Yes, the big clock's current artificial intelligence seems to occasionally harm itself. Although this feeling may make people feel embarrassed, it is also warm and active. The first voice Li Qingyan heard after crossing was the big clock's. Now he became a super soldier under the guidance of the big clock. In the future, everything he does in the Marvel Cinematic Universe will be accompanied by the big clock. He wants to treat the big clock as a partner, rather than a cold machine. Understood. The big clock continued to communicate with Li Qingyan in a humane way that suited Li Qingyan's style. This is about how to sense dark energy, how to sense micro-wormholes with dark energy, and the subsequent theoretical and practical operation data for opening wormholes. A large amount of information began to be transmitted into Li Qingyan's mind continuously. That is all the relevant information about super genes sensing dark energy, sensing wormholes, and controlling wormholes. Li Qingyan needs to spend a lot of time to understand and digest. And after digesting it, slowly practice it. This whole process takes time, and everyone's IQ, areas of expertise, etc. will also have deviations, so it is difficult to make an accurate judgment on the specific learning effect. But one thing is that the super soldier's brain has been strengthened and further developed the moment he becomes a super soldier. With the influx of knowledge and the development of insights, it will continue to strengthen in the future. Basically, as long as he has the relevant technology and is willing to study, any ability and technology in the Super God universe can be understood and mastered by the super soldier. In the next period of time, Li Qingyan was completely immersed in the study and understanding of information related to dark energy and wormholes. In order to master the basics of super warriors as soon as possible. Also in order to help Banner achieve communication with Hulk as soon as possible. For a long period of time that followed, Li Qingyan could be said to have forgotten all about food and sleep. Finally, after several months of research, he finally mastered microwormhole transport. Although many times, the algorithm is directly provided by the big clock. Relying on the induction of dark energy, Li Qingyan has been able to sense the surrounding micro-wormholes in a very short period of time, and then expand their size by adjusting the dark energy. If you want to completely master the microwormhole transport technology in one go, or if you want to understand a certain super magical technology in a short period of time, this is very difficult. After all, super god technology was born during the more than 200,000 years of the Kamigawa civilization. It was developed over hundreds of thousands of years in the entire super god universe. Even if Li Qingyan has the guidance of the big clock, even if he has become a super warrior, it will take a lot of time to truly understand super god technology and master the corresponding techniques of super god technology. And obviously, Li Qingyan doesn't have that much time now. Being able to master dark energy applications and microwormhole technology in a few months is a good start. If we want to implement the plan you proposed, it will consume a lot of energy, right? Li Qingyan is ready to communicate with Hulk. But before he started, he still had doubts. This world is not that simple. There are magicians supreme on the earth and gods in the universe. If you consume too much stellar energy at one time, I'm afraid they will come after me. The Marvel world, even if it is just the world of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, is still complicated and necessary. In this world, there are too many powerful and nosy people hidden. There is a sorcerer supreme on Earth. Asgard has Odin, the father of the gods. There are also a group of gods in the universe. There is another person in the multiverse named Kong the Conqueror. With Li Qingyan's current small body, if he provokes anyone, he won't be able to handle it. The use of stellar energy can start with its release. Replied the big clock. Start with release. What's the meaning? Li Qingyan was confused. The sun, all other stars, they are in a long-term self-release phase of energy. I know this. Anyone with a brain knows about sunshine. The energy released by the sun will shine on the planet and provide energy for the planet. But in fact, a large part of the energy released by the sun will be wasted. Just like the solar system you are in now, the light emitted by the sun can generate heat that can be transmitted to a distance of 15,000 light years. Within this distance, all celestial bodies in the universe will be affected by it. But within the distance of 15,000 light years that the energy released by the solar system can reach, the actual energy absorbed is less than 1/10. The big clock explained. Li Qingyan also had thoughts in his mind after listening to what it said. He understands the principle that the sun's energy will be consumed. After all, the sun releases heat energy in all directions with a circular point as the center. And a planet or celestial body like the Earth is only at a certain point in a certain direction in its full range. Therefore, there must be part of the sun's energy that does not act on planets and celestial bodies in the universe. But within a range as large as 15,000 years, how many planets and celestial bodies are there in the universe? If we were to pull it all together and lock the entire solar system in all directions without any blind spots, it would definitely be no problem, right? Your idea is good, but there is a loophole. What Li Qingyan is thinking can naturally be sensed by the big clock. How many boards would you need to cover the light emitted by a light bulb? Big clock reverse question. This is an opportunity for Li Qingyan to think about himself, and this opportunity can make his thinking more active and learn things faster. Just use the cardboard box that holds the light bulb. Li Qingyan gave the answer without thinking. But what if you want to block the light of an entire room? The big clock asked again, and this time, Li Qingyan fell into deep thought. This question made Li Qingyan clearly aware of his misunderstanding. When he imagined it before, he ignored the fact that after the heat energy spreads, its scope would also expand. There are countless planets and cosmic objects within 15,000 light years. But the range of 15,000 light years is already too huge to be imagined. Each of the 8 planets in the solar system can absorb the energy of the sun. But Mercury, the closest planet, can absorb much more energy from the sun than any of the others behind it. Because the distance is closer, the proportion of the sun's energy it can release is greater. Just like a paper box covering a light bulb, when you place it closest to it, this piece of paper can absorb 1/6 of its energy. But if this piece of paper is carried to the edge of the room, it will only occupy part of 1/6 of the wall. Calculated based on the area of the paper and the wall, this ratio may reach 1,000. Therefore, if inferred in this way, it is not surprising that not only 90% of the energy released by the sun is wasted, but even 99% is wasted. I understand what you mean. Li Qingyan now fully understood what plan the big clock really wanted to implement. You can calculate and use only the wasted part released by the sun. In this case, it will not affect the normal operation of the universe, right? Yes, the big clock gave a definite answer. As long as it doesn't interfere with the normal operation of the universe, then those who like to meddle will have no reason to target me. The last worries in Li Qingyan's heart were gone. The group of gods, conquerors, and observers of the universe, don't they all adhere to the principle of not interfering with the normal development of the universe? Since they have not broken the restrictions, what reason do they have to target them? Then get ready. I'm going to call Banner out and ask him to release Hulk. Let's have a good chat with Hulk, Li Qingyan said as he quickly walked towards the room where Banner was. We have been preparing for so long, it's time for the strongest Hulk on Earth to come out and make his appearance. Li Qingyan went directly to Banner. Banner had just gotten up at this time. He had not been in a very good state these days. Perhaps it was because the Hulk had been suppressed for too long that the effect of the anesthetic had begun to be ineffective. Banner's sleep quality deteriorated and his mental state began to decline. When his mental state began to decline, he would worry that Hulk would come out, and this worry would increase his pressure again. So, if Li Qingyan was not ready, Banner would have to prepare to leave. Because he had to find a place where no one was hiding before Hulk really came out. My preparations are complete, and we can let Hulk come out. Li Qingyan directly explained his purpose. He knew that Banner was very anxious about this matter. Really, Banner stood up excitedly. He had been waiting for this day for a long time, and it was very painful. Come, I can show you, Li Qingyan said, while stretching out his right hand and pushing hard in the air in front of him. With this push, a space wormhole was immediately formed. Moreover, as if to make Banner see it, the big clock also specially presents some colors to this wormhole. A real wormhole cannot be seen when it is unfolded. If you don't touch it, you don't even know that it has changed. This is. Banner looked at the wormhole curiously, and his eyes were also drawn by him at this time. Microwormhole, Li Qingyan said proudly. Microwormhole transportation technology. This is the ability that Li Qingyan has just mastered not long ago, and it is also the only superpower that Li Qingyan has so far. Yes, compared to ordinary people, this is a superpower. Wormhole. Banner was even more surprised. As a scientist, although he is more inclined to biology and chemistry, Banner still knows something about wormholes. Over the years, many people on Earth have studied wormholes. But so far, wormholes are still just a theoretical thing, and no one has even discovered the existence of wormholes. Now, Li Qingyan opened it casually. Right in this room, right in front of Banner. Moreover, this impulse is so stable. How did you do it? Banner was very curious. He wanted to know how Li Qingyan did it. Well, Li Qingyan hesitated. Can you use this wormhole to directly transfer Hulk to other spaces? Banner saw Li Qingyan's hesitation and understood Li Qingyan's thoughts. This must be the core secret of Li Qingyan, just like the super gene. Since it is a secret, it cannot be easily told to outsiders. Banner has been with Li Qingyan for so long, knowing Li Qingyan's character, and naturally will not touch Li Qingyan's bottom line in this regard. Anyway, he just needs to remember that Li Qingyan is a good person to him, and he can help him solve the huge crisis brought by Hulk, which is enough. Yes, Li Qingyan said very confidently. With the big clock, let alone transferring a Hulk, even transferring a great god like Kesha can be done. The greatest celestial computer known in the super god universe, are you kidding me? If this is really feasible, then at least when Hulk goes berserk, he can be prevented from destroying places where people are. Even though it is not known whether Li Qingyan can communicate with Hulk later. But as for the wormhole technology that Li Qingyan showed at this moment, as long as it is applied, it is enough to suppress Hulk. Let's go to a place where no one is first. After Li Qingyan finished speaking, he walked directly into the wormhole. On the other side of the wormhole, there is a barren desert. This is deep in the Sahara, an area where people are extremely rare. Even if the plan goes wrong at that time, it will never cause much harm. This is definitely what Banner wants to see the most. For Li Qingyan, as long as Hulk does not destroy his home and the places he cares about, nothing else matters. But for Banner, it is best not to hurt innocent people or destroy anything. Banner is also one of the few people who have known Li Qingyan for the longest time in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and he helped Li Qingyan to make the Super Gene Potion. Therefore, Banner is definitely Li Qingyan's friend. And Li Qingyan never makes things difficult for his friends. Banner soon came out of the wormhole. When he saw the endless desert in front of him, the expression on his face immediately relaxed. Here, Hulk has no chance to hurt anyone. And the wormhole is absolutely feasible. At least it has successfully teleported himself and Li Qingyan. Let Hulk out. Li Qingyan was already impatient to see Hulk. Banner suddenly looked a little embarrassed. This was his second attempt to actively summon Hulk. Last time he jumped directly from the helicopter. But this time, at this moment, what method should he use? Okay, I understand what you mean. Li Qingyan waved his hand, and a wormhole appeared directly under Banner's feet. Then, he was in the air, and then slammed down hard on the ground. Banner fell from the sky, his face full of surprise. He didn't expect that Li Qingyan would be so direct, and would actually use this method to help him summon Hulk. Bang! His body fell heavily into the sand, and the hot yellow sand and the pain caused by the impact when he landed put Banner's life in danger. A roar followed. A large area of yellow sand exploded directly as if it was bombed by a bomb. And in the yellow sand, the huge figure of the Hulk was rushing out savagely, rushing towards Li Qingyan. Oh my god! Li Qingyan was startled by the appearance of Hulk. But at the same time, he had already prepared the wormhole. Just when Hulk was about to rush in front of him, when he was waving his fist and was about to punch him out, he suddenly disappeared. The charging Hulk entered the wormhole, and his position was transferred to midair. Big clock! Li Qingyan shouted, waving his hands at the same time, and he began to try to open a huge wormhole. This wormhole appeared right below where Hulk fell, and the exit was right above Hulk. From high in the sky, Hulk, who was falling in a daze, appeared at the place where he fell at the beginning in a blink of an eye. This Hulk appeared when Banner's life was threatened and went berserk because of anger. He was completely dumbfounded at this moment. He couldn't figure out what state he was in. Are you confused? Your head is buzzing, right? Li Qingyan looked at Hulk, who was repeating the falling process with a proud expression. In the early days of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, the Hulk, who was known as the most powerful and violent, was now controlled by himself so easily. Hulk roared again, and he kept swinging his fists, trying to attack Li Qingyan. But no matter how much he waved his fist, he could still only fall freely in the corridor constructed by the wormhole. Don't be angry either. Li Qingyan put away his proud look. He came to communicate with Hulk. If Hulk couldn't calm down, he wouldn't be able to communicate with him. I don't mean to hurt you, I just want to have a good talk with you. Li Qingyan said, but at this time, he kept his distance from Hulk. Hulk has Thunder Palm, and that thing is pretty powerful. Therefore, Li Qingyan will not let himself enter the dangerous area rashly. He stood on the ground, keeping Hulk 5 or 6 meters high and more than 10 meters away. As long as you are willing to stop and sit down and talk to me, I will let you down. Li Qingyan first tried to negotiate terms with Hulk. But Hulk turned his head away with disdain. It didn't speak, but its mind was thinking. This is the most realistic situation of Hulk monitored by the big clock. Who said Hulk has no brain? He can think and use his brain. Open the second and third wormholes. Li Qingyan knew what Hulk was thinking, so he took a step ahead and started making arrangements. The scope of the wormhole in midair begins to shrink. At the same time, 2 more wormholes appeared in the 4 directions to the left, right, front and back of the wormhole. The 2 wormholes are oval-shaped and connected to the wormhole that originally trapped Hulk and allowed him to fall freely, forming a complete hexagonal frame. The 6 sections simultaneously form a complete space, in which all Hulk's exits will be blocked. Hulk, attack! Hulk yelled suddenly and slapped his hands together at an extremely fast speed. The moment the palms touched, an invisible energy storm was generated. At this moment, when Hulk fired a gamma energy blast, his body began to fly out sideways. The entire Earth's light actually flickered at this moment. This flickering scene made Li Qingyan's eyes widen suddenly. What happened? Li Qingyan was shocked and even more confused. This Hulk is a bit over the top, came the answer from the great clock. What's the meaning? Li Qingyan was dumbfounded, because he had a vague feeling that this problem might be serious. Hulk's energy is too great and has exceeded the range I originally calculated. This is not a trivial matter. If it exceeds the standard, the big clock will have to increase the calculation efficiency, and the energy consumption will increase accordingly. The big clock is not in contact with other stars now. It only uses the energy released by the sun in the solar system. If it exceeds the standard, all that will be consumed is the power of the sun. Doesn't that mean that the life of the sun will be shortened accordingly? This is the star system that gave birth to the celestial group. It is impossible for the celestial group to not notice the shortening of the star's lifespan. Moreover, if the sun's energy is greatly consumed, the Earth will definitely be affected. Now Li Qingyan has no way to enter space. If the Earth is destroyed, he will also be destroyed. It's not that serious, it's just a little bit over the limit. The calculation efficiency of a large clock is absolutely very accurate. How much is this little bit? Li Qingyan raised his head suspiciously and looked at the sky. At the moment when Hulk explodes with gamma energy, he needs to mobilize a little more energy in the solar system. Like now, the light in the sky suddenly flickered. The light that had always remained constant dimmed a little at this moment, and then returned to normal a moment later. Yes, it is like that. The big clock answered. Can it be avoided? If you extract energy directly from the interior of the sun, you can avoid this phenomenon. Then let him dodge. Li Qingyan looked helpless. Extracting the energy inside the sun will directly consume the life of the sun, and the consequences are too serious. Although it looks scary when it flashes like this, it actually doesn't have a great impact on the Earth and the sun. But is this a trivial matter? This doesn't seem like a small thing, does it? This looks almost like the three-body cosmic flicker, and this is not something Yang Miao can see alone, but everyone on the entire Earth can see it. Those with poor psychological quality may be frightened to death if they see such a scene. At this moment, in the beautiful country on the other side of the Earth, Nick Carey was standing in the tri-curved wing building, looking at the sky in confusion. Although it was dark here, he could see the moon. And now the moon flickers from time to time, just like a light bulb about to short circuit. He immediately sent a message to all branches of S.H.I.E.L.D. to ask if a similar situation had happened. Then he got the answer soon. Not only the light on the moon flickered, the sunlight of the entire Earth flickered. Moreover, scientists soon analyzed the incident. This is a kind of solar energy transfer, just like the sudden transfer of stellar energy on the Earth before. This phenomenon will not affect the Earth in a short period of time. If the Earth is not exposed to sunlight for 1 or 2 seconds, there will be no problem. But if this phenomenon continues many times and lasts too long, it will have an impact on the Earth. For example, the global temperature will begin to drop. Same as before. The last time this happened, wasn't it when Li Qingyan showed his superpowers? No need to think about it, this time it must be related to Li Qingyan. Natasha, who is in charge of Li Qingyan now? Nikki called Black Widow. Agent 101, she has been secretly paying attention to the situation on Li Qingyan's side. Black Widow is responsible for intelligence collection and incident handling on Li Qingyan's side. Now she is not with Li Qingyan, but she must always know the situation there. Tell her to go to the manor to find Li Qingyan immediately. I need to know what is going on. Nick Rui is very anxious now. It's not that this incident will have a great impact on the Earth's environment. But this incident will directly have a huge impact on the lives of ordinary people. Last time, the sun suddenly dimmed, and it could be said to be a special weather phenomenon. But this time, how to explain it to people all over the world? I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.